Roll.
Mayor Cunningham,
Here.
Vice Mayor Roman,
Here.
Commissioner Lau,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here. All present and accounted for. Up next on the agenda is public hearing. Do we have anybody that has filled out a card that would like to speak? If you'd like to do so anytime throughout the meeting, there are cards up here. If you would please just fill one out and we'll hear what you have to say. Any other public hearing business? I'll move on to the treasurer's report.
I believe we're actually postponing that to the works, to the board of commissioners meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
So we just going directly to that.
Defer that to next Thursday's meeting. All right, next up will be the reports from committees. I understand the sheriff's office hasn't been able to send our representative tonight. She got called away, so we're going to defer that to next Thursday night. And I believe just for the essence of time, Shane is asked to defer his city manager's report. So we will move on down to item 8, public discussion. The sewer commission business and anything on that for those. Next will be the consent agenda. Madam Recorder, if you would, please read what's on the consent agenda for us to hear.
Approving of meeting minutes from previous meeting. A, Bureau Board meeting minutes, January 10th, 2019. B, regular meeting minutes, January 10th, 2019. C, special meeting minutes, January 17th, 2019.
All right, do I have a motion to bring this to the floor? Second. All right, it's open for discussion. Any discussion? Everybody good? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We'll move on.
Just a point of order. I just wanted to remind, we're in a work session, which means this is pretty much a relaxed rules. So we get a copy of the agenda for next week. And so we're just kind of working through it to see if there's any questions that each other has and having discussion. So there's really no reason to have motions or to get anything. We're just trying to have a candid conversation, and then next week it's all flowing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, we'll move on into the regular agenda. Open for discussion will be, I guess, first order of business will be our interviews for our new city attorney. That is sponsored by me. So, Shane, if you would introduce who we have.
One second, sorry. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. This evening I have for you we have three attorney candidates that have expressed an interest in this position with the city of Lakeland. So I'll just kind of call them as their order in the seat there. The first candidate that we'd like to introduce to you is Josh Baker. Josh.
Yeah, if you would just introduce yourself. give us a little background.
Sure, thank you for having me here. My name is Josh Baker. I'm a senior associate at Martin Tate Barlow and Morrison here in Memphis. Practice primarily a number of areas of law, trust and estates, commercial real estate, administrative law, litigation, have a fairly broad practice background. I hold a JD MBA from the University of Memphis. My bachelor's degree is from the University of Tennessee. Prior to practicing law from Middle Tennessee originally, prior to practicing law, served 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. Happy to be here. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Do you have any experience drafting ordinances and resolutions?
No experience drafting ordinances and resolutions. It's interesting when I was approached about this position. Typically, I counsel clients, businesses, and individuals on the other side of the table for the government. So this was an interesting request to come and be on part of the actual drafting side as it relates to legislation, but also on the other side of the table where I usually sit.
Quick question.
Sure.
Have you had any dealings with ethics in government? What's your experience in that?
When you say ethics in government, to be more specific.
Just specific, just showing ethics, conduct of government officials, me, anybody else, and having to deal with a situation like that.
I can't say specifically. Attorneys are governed by the rules of professional conduct. Judges by the canon of law. So as it relates to the conduct, specific conduct of a commissioner, no, I can't say that. I would advise the client on that.
Just to have something briefly.
Sure.
Obviously, our city attorney sits in our DOC meetings and occasionally is asked to give a legal opinion regarding an issue in a public forum such as this. Are you comfortable responding in this kind of an atmosphere and when appropriate, be able to provide us with a written legal opinion?
Yes. Yeah, I regularly appear before various administrative bodies and courts, and have no problem advising publicly, whether that's oral or written.
Do you perceive any potential conflict of interest?
I don't initially. Our firm represents, I would submit that our firm represents probably more clients than anyone in town as it relates to economic development incentives. That's where a large chunk of my work and our firm's work resides. I also represent, I've represented hundreds, maybe thousands of businesses and individuals as it relates to certain property tax appeals. But I don't perceive any. Typically, those would be before the Edgewood or Shelby County or the Shelby County assessor. But no.
I have a question.
Sure.
The city attorney is hired to directly work with the city manager as well as to serve the board of commissioners. And at sometimes during our business, we are not all agreeing on a certain issue. Are you prepared to serve each and every one of us fairly without bias and dealing with a political type situation? How would you handle that?
Yeah, so what I would say with regard to Mr. Horn, I spoke with Mr. Horn this morning, and with regard to the political situation, I think the role of the city attorney should be similar to the role of an attorney in any situation. And that would be to give you the landscape, sort of the fences, the boundaries of what may or may not be done to advise you of the different routes that could be taken lawfully before you. I think it's the role to provide counsel with regard to those specific routes, the upshot of those and the downshot of those. As it relates to the politics or any disagreements, I think I would leave that to you. I think there's always certain decisions when you're advising businesses, for example. There are often decisions of what we call the business decisions, right, that relate to the operations of the business. And those are outside, those are not legal questions, and they're better left to the owners of the business. I do that similarly, I think, with this body, that my job is to kind of paint the landscape for you, to show you what could be done, what could not be done, provide some counsel as to what I think, but with ultimately, you all are the elected officials, and I think this ultimate decision would reside with you. With regard to uncomfortable, conflict, make me uncomfortable now.
Anyone else have any other questions? Just one that I plan on asking all of the candidates is, as you are set with your position currently, do you perceive there to be any potential conflicts of interest, what your daily duties are now in carrying on the business of Lakeland as the city attorney?
No, not really conflicts. Check with my firm prior to appearing here, so.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you want to tell us about yourself?
No, happy, thank you again for allowing me to appear before you, and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
The second candidate I'd like to call up is Mike Marshall from Evans Petrie. Mike?
Good evening. My name's Mike Marshall. I'm a lawyer with Evans Petrie. I've been with Evans Petrie, scary to say now, but I've been with Evans Petrie for almost 28 years now. I'm not a native of this part of the country, but I've been here since 1991. My wife and I met in law school. She is a native Memphian. I've been working at Evans Petrie really since I got here. I am thrilled to have been asked to be considered for the position of city attorney this evening. I brought with me one of my law partners, Joe Getz. Joe is the president of the law firm. I'll let you know that we're really, really excited about this opportunity. Joe's father, you may know, was a long-term judge here in town. Joe served early on as a county attorney and currently leads our construction law section and probably knows more about construction law in this part of the country than anyone else in captivity. My own background is that is relevant to this. I do a fair amount of HR law, human resources law, labor employment. I do a fair amount of general business law. I do a fair amount of, these days, construction law, and also have a fair amount of experience in government and education law. I'm currently the general counsel for the Collierville schools. I'm the general counsel for Shelby County 911, which is an independent, a lot of people don't know this about Shelby County 911. It's an emergency communications district, which is a separate government municipal corporation that sits in the middle of Shelby County. I tell people that our job is to make the phones ring. So we don't actually employ in Shelby County any of the folks on the other side of the phones, but we support all of the community, both the county and all the municipalities inside of Shelby County to make sure that they have equipment that works, that it's the very best equipment that we can get them, that all of their folks get training, that need training, and any other support that we can give them. I was the former general counsel also for the Memphis City Schools, when the Memphis City Schools still existed. Kept me very busy. And throughout the years I've done a fair amount of work in and around other governmental entities. And again, we're very excited to have this opportunity.
I'll get started. Mr. Marshall, I reached out to you and thank you for having interest in our opportunity here. But when I reached out to you, because of your relationship with the Collierville School Board, and I asked you a little bit about kind of the same question that Commissioner Dow had
about representing the board as an entity. I thought you had a great response, and I was hoping you'd share that philosophy with the board.
Well, I have represented, again, several governmental entities, and the question, and you know, some have been easy. You know, I think with the Collierville schools, we've had one divided vote since we have been created. There were others, like with the Memphis City Schools and with Shelby County 911, where we've had more differences of opinion. The way that I have negotiated that is that my client is the entity. I don't represent the mayor, I don't represent the commissioners, I don't represent the city manager, I represent the city of Lakeland. What that means is, in my mind, is I am happy to talk with anybody at any time about anything. But my legal opinion is my legal opinion. And if I write something down, everyone gets it. Because I've been put in a position before where, you know, for whatever reason, folks try and use a lawyer's writing or opinion as a tool in a political argument. And so the way that I have found that is fair to everybody, it's important that I think everyone that makes a decision, which is you, have the same information that I've given to anybody else. I think that covers the landscape.
So with your experience in a wide variety of areas and with the large law firm that you are a part of, if we asked you questions that you didn't necessarily know an immediate answer to, you would have those resources from your law firm at your disposal to get opinions and other legal advice as to how to lead us in the best direction. Will they be at your disposal for, yes, he's shaking his head, yes. So we.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
We have one of our other law partners, I think I included in the stuff that I gave each of you, just as an example, is Frank Carney. You have his bio. Frank represents the wonkier, nerdier areas of governmental entities that make tax lawyers run for the hills. He does a lot of employee benefits. He is the lawyer for the consortium for the healthcare, that consortium. He really knows more about employee benefits, especially on the government side, I think, than anyone else in the state. He is up to his hips in OPEB liabilities and all that stuff. So yes, we have lots of folks who are very well versed in, you know, everything from real estate development to funding to bonds to taxes to employee benefits, and all those folks would be at the city's disposal.
Thank you very much.
Quick question, I'll ask you the same question as I asked the previous gentleman. Have you had any experience as an ethics officer, because part of our charter, you will be our ethics officer?
I haven't had any experience as a formal ethics officer. I've had experience in the various governmental entities that I've represented in advising on ethical issues and on conflicts of interest. But I haven't actually worn the official hat as an ethics officer.
I think it's like the military, it's an extra duty.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Do you see that as a challenge, as a career challenge to add that list of roles to your current duties?
Yeah.
Just a quick question, did you work at 81 Monroe Building?
I did work in 81 Monroe, yeah. I was there for the first several years of my career on the 5th floor.
Spent a lot of time in that building. Check it out tonight. Okay.
Yep, I was there.
I'll ask the same one I asked for the previous candidate. Do you perceive that you could have any potential conflicts of interest for you while carrying out duties with the city of Lakeland?
We have run that. I don't anticipate any conflicts of interest.
I just, with you having experience with general counsel for tribal schools and with the Shelby County Emergency, I just want to make sure that I ask the question fairly to all the candidates. So
I don't believe so, no, sir.
appreciate that. Anyone else? I guess I should turn my mic on, it might be easier. Anything else you want to tell us about yourself?
No, I think I covered it at the outset. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to be considered. We consider it an honor, and it shows and hope that we'll do some good for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you both for coming.
Our final candidate tonight is Kim Koretsky. Mr. Koretsky?
Good evening. My name is Kim Koretsky. I have practiced law for 21 years, 13 years in private practice, and the most recent 8 with Shelby County government. The majority of that time I spent with the county attorney's office, where I was, for the most of that, the deputy county attorney. And it's easier with the county attorney to say what we didn't do than what we did do, because we served all functions of the law for the county, for Shelby County government. Not bond work, because that's so specific, and you have to be so careful, and so you really need an expert to handle that type of thing. But in my time with Shelby County, I did a lot of training. I did training on harassment. By and large, I've been a labor and employment lawyer for most of my career. I did training on harassment, but I also did training for Shelby County employees on open meetings and public records, that type of thing. Drafted a lot of resolutions and ordinances. Functioned as, the ethics officer is housed in the county attorney's office. I worked very closely with that individual and did a lot of advising to both employees and commissioners and folks in the mayor's office on ethics questions. I'm just trying to think of everything we did. I'll leave beyond that. I'll leave the questions to you.
Yeah, it looks like you got us with the questions there, so you're listening really well.
I was trying.
So you're prepared. Any questions you have for us?
No, the only thing that I would comment on, and it's something that I talked to Mr. Point about, I would advocate coming on as an employee as opposed to a member of a firm. My situation is, and my time is drawing to a close at Shelby County government. I'm currently in the public defender's office assisting with transition because he's trying to retire, and so I'm helping him prepare transition notebooks and things like that to pass off to his successor. In looking at the budget, I believe there would be a substantial savings. It would also alleviate the question of conflict, as you raised. The conflict wouldn't be present because the person would be an employee of Lakeland as opposed to an employee of the law firm that was hired by Lakeland. To throw some real quick numbers out, looking at your budget, you have budgeted, and it just in the general fund legal services, you have $90,000 budgeted. And here's where I start to guess. At Shelby County, we spend about $250 to $300 an hour for outside counsel. Based on that, you have around 360 hours a year, or what would that be, 30 hours a month of time on average that you use for the lawyer. If we were to do a circumstance where you hired me as an employee, my rate with the county attorney's office, my wage rate is around $64 an hour. Based on that and figuring 15 hours a week generally for time for Lakeland, because I'm looking for a part-time position. 15 hours a week for Lakeland, if you run those numbers out, For an annualized, it's around $49,000 a year. If you added $120, $150 a month to buy Westlaw so that I could do the research that I would need in order to answer your questions, that adds $1,800. You're still well south of that $90,000 number. And that allows money to, if need be, hire expertise from outside, and that may be damaging in my case. We hired Mr. Marshall with Shelby County. He handled the case for us. I was the primary advisor to the retirement board, but that was for advice and counsel. When we need specialized litigation, we went outside and hired outside counsel to handle that. But the beauty of that situation is we could ask the question of outside counsel as lawyer to lawyer and get a quicker answer. So like, I already know this is the box. Here's the box. This is what Commissioner Dodd wants to know. And I would get a quicker answer, so there would be some savings, I think, in handling it that way. But I know that's throwing you a curve. If you would like to talk to me about affiliating with a law firm and charging you $250 to $300 an hour, I could do that, but I would prefer not to, because I found, having worked outside and inside, first of all, I like the idea that I don't have to write down every time my client calls me and bill them every time the phone rings. I'm accessible. If a department head has a question, they can call me. I can also spend as much time as I need to on a project in order to make sure that it gets done right and not worry about blowing up my client's litigation budget or legal services budget. And finally, what I kind of refer to as preventative medicine. If department heads call me with a question, then we can avoid a problem before it happens, as opposed to having to fix it later. And then I become kind of like Mr. Goodrich. You can pay me now, you can pay me later. But if you pay me later, you probably broke something, so it's going to cost more to fix it. So, but that's my spiel. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So you're willing to come on board on a part-time basis to actually streamline our process legally, as well as saving a substantial amount of money?
The hope is certainly to save the money. I mean, out of the gate certainly would. Now, part of that would depend on how much outside counsel we'd have to hire for specific things. Clearly, I wouldn't want to do bond work. You know, we'd have to hire that. If we were going to do bonds, we'd want to have outside counsel do that. If there's litigation, I manage litigation, but I wouldn't necessarily want to be the guy that's out there in the trenches, especially if it's a higher end where the risks are really high. We want somebody with expertise in that particular area. I mean, to your point, there are folks out there that have expertise that I don't necessarily have. I've been doing it 21 years, but I can't say I know anything. But there's certainly folks out there to call for those kinds of questions. There is also MTAS and CTAS, which is they publish Bibles for these things. So there's a lot of resources out there to use, but there will be times you have to call an outside counsel. But yes, it would save you money. It would make me more accessible to you. Whether I was officed here for that 15 or 20 hours, whatever we decided we needed per week, or officed from my house with laptops and cell phones, it's just not that hard to reach somebody right now.
Right. Sorry, reading your resume is quite impressive.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Actually,
You still in Cordova?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So close by. It's a short run over here. It's a whole lot quicker commute to come over here than it is to drive all the way downtown.
all right, anything else you want to tell us about yourself?
No, I think I tried to hit the high spots of the questions that you'd already asked, and as you observed here, try to streamline the process.
Fantastic. All right.
But, and I guess one question that you asked, but I don't know that I really addressed, is in terms of the conflict issue between the bodies. And to dovetail a bit on what Mr. Marshall said, my answer has consistently been for the Board of County Commissioners and the mayor, I don't represent you, I don't represent you. In the county, I represent the charter, and we have a charter, and the charter gives me the answer that I need to have. Now, it's not my job to say no. I learned that early on in practice. That just makes clients angry. But it's my job to assess the risk and to tell you, here's the downside risk of the way, especially for department heads. We want to fire Joe. Well, here's the downside risk of firing Joe. But how about this? How about a performance improvement plan? How about we document it so that we can, when we do fire Joe, we don't have as much worries about when Joe sues us. We can lay it out easier and overcome it. But that's kind of the way the answer has to be. Here's what the legal answer is. Here's what the charter dictates, or in your case, what your ordinances say or the statutes say. And that's kind of the answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any objection to go ahead and take item 10, in case there's folks that are here that need to leave after that?
I'm sorry, I thought I updated that to actually move 10 up next. If it's not on your agenda that way, I apologize, but.
It's quite all right. So 10 now becomes the new 2.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Dr. Borrell has a commitment he needs to get to, and I'd like to use his expertise while he's with us this evening and proceed in this presentation. So before we move into that, I just want to kind of lay down some groundwork, I guess, on the amount of effort that's gone into where we're at today. Obviously, our job, my job, staff's job is to present information to you in an unbiased, factual way. Obviously, moving into this area, I can certainly understand and realize the power that a high-performing school has on a community, and really congratulations to all of the Lakeland administrators and principals for all they've done to get the recognition that they've done. So certainly excited to see how that could continue moving forward. So the information that's in front of you is, and I'm very fortunate and blessed to work with such a high-performing staff. Kyle has put a lot of effort into this presentation to try to give you all things to consider and options to consider, if you will. A lot of groundwork has been laid in this presentation, so I didn't want there to be any, again, I want to essentially try to stay in my lane, if you will. My job is to give you the information. It's not to direct you one way or another. That's really what you folks are elected to do. So I hope that the information that's been shared with you in the presentation that will follow will be of value to you as you make your ultimate decision. And certainly we stand ready to run with your decision and carry that decision out to the best of our ability. So I just want to again thank staff for their amount of effort that they put into this to get us here, and I'll have Kyle and Dr. Borrell come up and kind of lead us through this presentation.
So, Mr. Manager, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Can you kind of set some parameters of what was, when Kyle put this presentation together, what were the parameters you gave him, what was the goals that you gave him? And the reason why I asked that is that's part one of the question. Part two of the question is this anyone's vision on this board, or is this information that the city is wanting to interject into the discussion?
Again, the only direction I guess I gave Kyle in this regard is to present the options that are available to us to consider, or available to you to consider. Again, not trying to sway any decisions or
So this is not
opinions
so
or
this is not the
ideas.
vision of anybody on this board, is what you're saying?
No.
Okay, and so this was not worked on in conjunction with anybody on this board?
No.
Okay. And so what were the parameters that Kyle was given when you put this presentation together? And the reason why I asked that is because there's a significant number of new information. For example, additional employees as part of your presentation. The parameters, I mean, you've changed the whole conversation is what I'm saying. And so, and I don't believe is this in response to Ms. Dial's request, or is this a completely different request?
No, I think my job as manager is to look at the entire budget. I think I have a responsibility to present to you a budget that is fair and is balanced. And while I certainly appreciate what a school does, and there's other items in this budget that I'm responsible for as far as the day-to-day activities of the city. So I think it's important that you all know and understand that we have some pretty significant capital needs that we forecasted. We all know that Lakeland is growing. Many staff members are wearing multiple hats. It's not going to take long before we have employees that are just totally burnt out. So if we don't start addressing needs in the future, that's all that slide is saying. These are the things that are on the horizon that I think we need to pay attention to.
So this is your vision?
Well, I think it's a vision from me, and it's a vision from Kyle as well, because I think, again, we're responsible for the budget. We have to make sure that we have the resources in place to be able to carry this budget forward.
Okay. Is this the mayor's vision?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Are we seeing a presentation from you tonight, Mr. Mayor?
No, I'm still getting my head around the numbers he's put together too, so I'm gonna have something for next week.
So you're creating, so basically I've put in a lot of work to put in ideas of how we could afford a school that showed significant possible budget cuts if we went to capital outlay note. Ms. Dial said that she would like to see basically my numbers fact checked. And instead of doing that, you came with a completely different vision out of right field. I don't mind if you present it, I'm just saying, I want to make sure we understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and again, I respectfully would say that it's not out in left field. I think we have to know the full scope of the budget, right? We can't just say.
No, we are not in the budget cycle right now.
Okay. And ultimately, this is up to you, right?
Well, if it's up to us, then what we would.
We don't need to present this presentation at all. And
I don't believe you do.
if that's the consensus of the board, then we don't do it.
Now let's hear your presentation again.
I've spent a significant amount of time. I mean, I'm just saying that Ms. Dial asked to fact check my numbers to see if we were comfortable making the cuts that I recommended, would $1.83 substantiate that? And that's what I was hoping the presentation would be on tonight. Instead, I opened up a file to find a vision that was never discussed.
Again, this is not a vision statement. This is simply running the numbers through and seeing what that looks like. This is not something I'm trying to force down onto you.
Were you asked for this information?
No. I mean, this is something that we felt was valuable for you to make an educated decision at some point. So you have all the numbers in front of you to be able to make the decision.
So you're presenting information that wasn't asked for, but you're not interjecting a new vision.
Again, we don't need to present the data. I think there's value to having a full story.
You're welcome to present it. I just know my issue is that the conversation that we're having is not currently in the budget cycle. We're having a conversation separate from the budget cycle. And so from the presentation I saw, it feels like we're, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for. I don't want to try to find the wrong word this time. But it doesn't feel like we're helping the conversation. It feels like we're trying to interject the budget conversation in the middle of a funding conversation, as opposed to saying, okay, are we or are we not comfortable with possible cuts, as the Vice Mayor mentioned last week? If we're not comfortable, then great, let's have a budget conversation. However, if we are, then we have a starting point and we have to work backwards from there. And so what I'm saying is that this presentation, I believe, takes that starting point and kind of muddies the water. I mean, I understand that you want to say, hey, we possibly need 6 or 8 more employees. And you have, but this is the time.
Again, that's not what I'm asking for in this presentation at all. There's no ask for additional employees in the presentation. I think we need to know what the full scope of, we take out a $40 million bond, or however we're going to do this, the net debt service, that additional debt service, how does that impact the overall budget of the city? And I think we need to have those things answered, and I think that's what we've tried to put together, looking at the whole scope of the budget.
So, and again, I'm just trying to make sure we set the tone right. All right, so from what Michelle Dial, Commissioner Dial requested, is there a separate presentation on that?
No, I think I need more clarity on what you want me to do going forward.
I asked you to come forward with an answer as to whether or not setting the tax rate at a certain amount would be able to finance the plan that Commissioner Roman presented to us. And $1.83 is the number that we looked at. I do see that with the 3 different financing options that you did allude to, no reduction in city services and decreases in roads budgets. And I do see, I didn't see anything specific to the amount of the tax increase that would be necessary to move forward with the refinancing of the current note, and then moving forward, wrapping in the new note, the new amount, and we were going with a number of 35 million. However, I do understand why you included the 40 million after the presentation on Tuesday night from Dr. Porrell at the school board, Monday night, with his projection of a $40 million build out. So basically, when I asked you to come forward with the sales tax, the number it would take to be able to increase the property tax, to be able to afford to go on with the 35 million to build the school, if that sales tax rate would cover that. And I do see some of that.
Yeah, and I think
but
you're
do
gonna,
see-
if we're allowed to present the data, I think you're gonna hear some of that.
I do see some of that, absolutely, but there is a lot of other information in here that really muddies the waters, specifically the third option of financing, and,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to know where you're coming from. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it feels like a different conversation. It feels like it's a conversation around, what should go into the budget, what shouldn't go into the budget, as opposed to where we have possibilities for funding if we were comfortable with positive cuts. I feel like you're taking the conversation and kind of taking it in a different direction. And if you feel like that that's what you have to do, then that's fine, then own it and say, hey, you guys are discussing cuts that I may not be comfortable with, and so I want to share such and such with you. And if that's the case, then that's great, we can have that as part of the budget conversation. But from what I've seen here, no one asked for it. So if no one asked for this information, where we're going through this, then I feel like you all are putting your own spin on this conversation. And that's fine, then just own it.
Well, I'm going to speak up here because, quite frankly, this man is tasked with managing this city. And I applaud him. This man took the initiative after we sat here for 3.5 hours and beat each other up. Do we want to build a high school or not, folks? This man took it upon himself, as I understand it right now, to come up with this. And like I said, I got this the same time all of you did, and I'm still looking through the numbers too because I want to make sure it's right. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it by the numbers that these gentlemen get paid every day to do. If this man is going to be expected to manage the city, I respect the fact that he stepped out there and took it upon himself to put this together. And I can tell you, it's quite shocking looking at it. And I would encourage that this is taxpayer dollars. I don't care if you want to call it muddying up the water or what. This is every one of the people in this city's tax dollars that are getting spent and getting spent for future generations. So I'm not going to sit here and listen to people attack this man for doing what he felt was in the best interest of the city, because that's what we paid him to do. And I would encourage you to follow through and let's see the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a course of action. That's what he's paid to do. So let's look at the course of action. It's got the good, it's got the bad, and the ugly in it. Our folks need to know what could happen and what couldn't happen. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead with your worst case scenario, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Warren, I did want to say that the reason I want us to be so careful is because we know that we can only set the tax rate one time per year. And I want to make sure that that number is right, so that if we do raise the tax rate, that we don't have to come back around and with our hands in the air going, oh gosh, we should have gone a few cents more. And I don't want us to have to do that. So,
And I wholeheartedly agree, and
Yes.
that's why I was hoping, having this open dialogue in this type of setting, that we would get more clarity and know how to proceed going forward.
Real quick, I was going to say, with the presentation, there are things that can be altered as far as what you propose for improvements and things like that. So that's the caveat there.
Ultimately, the elected body, you will give us that direction. If the tax rate is X, then we rally around that tax rate, and
It's mountable.
absolutely. So,
and we are approaching budget season.
yes.
So we are coming on that. So with this increase, we will still know what we have to work with to be able to run this city appropriately and fund everything that needs to be funded along with the building of the school.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me say I appreciate y'all moving this around on the schedule. I have to leave at about 7:15. I have a very good reason. I play in the praise band at my church. So when I leave, I'm literally on a mission from God. So please don't try to stop me. Okay? But I appreciate the opportunity to present. I am basically updating. I've spoken to you and I've presented these numbers to our school board, and we were asked to basically give the build-out cost for what it would look like if we built out everything that we would like to build out on the Lakeland Prep campus. Now, this is an exercise that we are familiar with, having done it several times over the last 4.5 years. I do want to just provide some context to this. 4.5 years ago, when we first contemplated building the combined middle and high school, it was basically based on two premises. And those premises were that the cost of construction is going to go up and the student enrollment in Lakeland is going to go up. We're not always right, but we were very right about both of those things. We spend a lot of time talking about the cost of construction going up and people talking about should it have gone up that much and could it have gone up that much. But I want to note something about the students. 3 years ago, Lakeland School System did a facilities master plan, and part of that was working with our shared planner, Nedra Jones, who is phenomenal. She was a longtime Shelby County Schools planner, did the projections for every single school in Shelby County Schools for years. When the municipalities broke off, we had a shared services with the other municipalities, and she provided those projections for every school in the municipalities up until last year, where we did our projections for the first time. From our facilities master plan, this is while we were building Lakeland Middle Preparatory School. This was from the facilities master plan. She wrote, the middle school serving grades 5th through 8th should have enrollment levels near 700 students over the 5-year horizon. So she was projecting, she's very good at what she does. She was projecting 700 students in 5 through 8 from the year 16-17 through 2022. last year, we got an independent demographer, and I've shared these numbers with several of you guys. And by the way, the actual numbers for 17-18 for 5 through 8 were 772. Okay, so her numbers were through 2022. She was predicting that it would be 700. Last year, Jerry McKibben, who does our projections now, he projected that in 21-22 we would have 784 students at Lakeland Middle Prep. We just got an update just recently from him. We don't have the full report yet, but he did run the output numbers. He is now projecting that in 21-22 we will have 838 students at Lakeland Middle Prep. So we've gone from 700 to a projection last year of 784 to 838. And he asked me via email, he said, do you see anything amiss about these numbers before I run the full report? And I said, the only thing I see amiss is that they're all much larger this year. What would have changed in a year? Because I do not give him any coaching on what I'm looking to see. We give him data. We give him what the numbers are this year. He also looks at the community. I said, what are you seeing that's making those numbers go up? And he said, we had a spike in existing home sales, and we expect it to continue. So existing home sale, actually, I think he said existing home sales in Lakeland picked up, and we expect it to continue. And I pointed this out sometimes to people because they say, well, they're not building the homes as fast as we thought they were, so I mean, we're not growing as fast as we thought we would. Families with kids are figuring out how to get to Lakeland and getting into our schools. That's what's happening. They're buying homes as they come available, and these are families with children. And if anybody says Lakeland's not growing as fast as we thought it was going to, come count the kids in the desks in our schools, because it is significantly higher, okay? Now, speaking of significantly higher, we have completed our costing, our pricing exercise for Lakeland Middle Prep. I do want to point out a few people that have helped me with this, and they have helped us every year and a half or so. It's kind of become something we do regularly on this, and they're very patient to continue doing it, and I wish the numbers didn't keep going up, but they do. And one of those is Jim Mitchell with Southern Educational Strategies in the back, who serves as a consultant with us and has since the very beginning. We have tonight David Smith and Michael Waddell from A2H, who are also our partners, working with architecture and engineering specifically on this, and Doug Burris and Mike Terry from Renaissance Groups, and all of these folks, all Lakeland stakeholders, certainly in addition to being experts at what they do, helped us with these numbers. And I want to give an idea of kind of what this looks like too, because people often ask, well, how does this work? Where do you come up with these numbers? Some people go as far as to say, do you just make this up and write it down on a napkin and turn it in? And I assure you, this is something that takes a number of weeks and a significant amount of expertise for people way beyond me. What we start with is what's called the program, the architectural program for the school. So this is what kind of classrooms do we need? What kind of extra spaces do we need? How big do we want those spaces to be? How many people do we want the auditorium to seat? How many people do we want the gym to seat? What kind of CTE spaces career and technical education spaces do we need? How much circulation space do we need? How wide do the halls need to be? Fortunately, Jim Mitchell is expert in that, having helped design and build, I think, north of 40 schools, if you count the renovations during his time at Shelby County Schools. So we were able to start with that, and then we plug that in, and we give that to the architects and the engineers, and we also give it to our partners in construction. And we've been working with Chris Woods Construction, who built the great middle school, and in fact recently won an award for the construction at that middle school. In parallel, while that's happening, we are also trying to figure out what type of site work is going to be needed. And that's really where the engineers come in, and they are able to put together with specific kind of per unit cost. How much is the dirt work going to cost? How much is the flat work or the concrete going to cost? What is the kind of electrical demands that you're going to need in the building? What about the extending the gas? Every little piece of that gets priced out into the building. We also update our FF&E, which is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment numbers, and we try to get updated numbers on that. And we're able to use, fortunately, we have very good data. We're able to use the information from Lakeland Middle Prep that was completed 2 years ago and can kind of update those numbers and find out what we project those costs to be. And each of them goes back, they're able to go from Chris Woods Construction back to their subcontractors, find out what the pricing is these days. You know, they're looking at current prices and then looking at when we actually might go out to bid or start construction on this and what that would cost. So essentially what we came up with for the project description that we are describing here, and let me say again, this is idealized. This is what we would like to build. We don't have to have all of these things to not only open a high school, but have a great high school, okay? This is idealized. This is beyond what most high schools in Shelby County open with. A lot of them add things as they go, just as Arlington is adding soccer field houses for their high school right now. We have soccer field houses in these numbers. A lot of high schools don't start with their own wrestling room. We have a wrestling room in these numbers. There are a lot of things that we want, but don't necessarily have to start with. So we started with high school classrooms, a food court, varsity gym, locker rooms, auditorium, high school administrative wing, CTE spaces. That comes out to about 174,840 square feet. So that's kind of the base of what we're doing. And by the way, this is a school that would accommodate 2,000 students would be the goal here. Okay, it has as many regular classrooms as Arlington High School does now. The athletic field houses, concessions, public restrooms, that's 20,000 square feet. Now that's an area, again, where that is what we would like to have. You don't have to have those things, okay? We don't have to have them. There's many schools, particularly Memphis City schools, don't even have their own football fields, much less a football field house. But that's what we like to have. Baseball, softball field with lights, the home side bleachers and the press box, that would seat about 1,450. Our school board is looking at having visitor side bleachers installed already that would accommodate about 1,000 with the visitor side press box. We don't have to have the home side press box necessarily, or it can come later. Again, these are kind of things we could value engineer if we needed to. We priced a running track, 400-meter 8-lane. You don't have to have an 8-lane, but that's what we priced. That's what we like to have. The additional parking, pavement, and there is another practice field that is priced in here. At the time that we first contemplated the practice field, we didn't have the the artificial turf field. It could theoretically make that unnecessary if we were deciding to value engineer this project. And then a loop road to Highway 70. This is something that we have always thought that when we open the high school that we will need an additional access point from Highway 70. There's a certain amount of this cost that would likely be picked up by a developer or developers, but we went ahead and priced it as to what the whole thing would cost if we were responsible for building the whole thing ourselves on our timeline. To give you an idea, most of what you see at the bottom is already done. The dark blue is kind of a rough outline of what the high school wing would look like. The part that sticks out in the kind of headed down to the bottom is the high school classroom wing. It wouldn't look exactly like that, but that's something like it would look. So if we go from where the varsity gym is now, or the middle school gym is now, you'd have a varsity gym, you'd have an auditorium that seats 800, which is a very nice size auditorium. And then we would be adding a lot of this parking, the baseball, softball, both with lights. We've already built the soccer and the football field, and then that practice field, and then the access road, which is not pictured on there. So that gives you an idea of the scope of what we're talking about. All right, so what is the breakdown on that? And each of these numbers have been broken down even more than this. Again, we've got things that are the cost of a cubic yard of dirt, or square feet of concrete, pavement, and those kind of things. The building itself, we think, would be about $22,000. These athletic facilities that we're talking about, if we did everything we wanted to do, would be about 3.4. Baseball, softball is about 1.3. Those home side bleachers, about 950,000. I know, it's surprising. The running track's about $1 million to get the kind of track in that we need for varsity competition. Parking pavement in the practice field, another 1.75. That access road is probably going to be 2.35 or so. FF&E, everything that needs to go in the building, another 4.25. It was roughly 2 for the middle school is what we did for FF&E, so this would likely be a little more than double, we think. And then A&E is your architecture and engineering fees, a contingency fee. Other soft costs is things like the fees you pay to MLGW. We have to get the property geo-tested. People are testing the soil, testing the concrete, making sure it's safe, all the other things that come up, approvals and working with different groups to get your plans approved. So the total project cost, and we had a little extra that we put in there into the contingency and soft cost to round it up. I know people, it can't be exactly 40 million. It's not exactly 40 million, it's still a little less, but not a whole lot less. So the number that we came up with is $40 million, which is the top end of what we had been saying for about 6 weeks, that we thought the project was going to come in between 35 or $40 million. One of the attorney candidates mentioned that it's pay now or pay later. Already we have chosen to pay later, and our caveat would be pay now or pay a lot more later. And that's just what we've seen. Every time we do this pricing exercise, the numbers have gone up very dramatically. But I want to say again, this is idealized. If this board said, based on the information you have, or the proposals that have been presented, that the appropriate amount that the city is able to contribute is 35, we can build a great high school for $35 million. We would go back and value engineer it. There are things we might not have right away. There are things we might find that we think we can't have right away, and we still can. And I want to remind everybody that even at the initial $20 million for the middle school, we came in $1 million under that number. That's when you can start thinking about adding things back in that you may have value engineered out. We'd like to think we could do that again. When I talk to the design team and the pricing team, one of the things I say in the meetings is, don't give me a number please don't give me a number that you're not confident about. That you don't want me to stand in front of this board and the city and the internet and be confident that you can build. So it's very likely that it could come out a little lower than that and mean less that we would have to value engineer out of the project. I'll tell you my recommendation right now, if we were to start value engineering, I wouldn't mess with the classroom certainly, and I wouldn't even mess with the spaces in the school like the auditorium and the gym. I mentioned that as an example, but in my mind, those are the things you leave. We'd probably start looking at things like field houses and other parts of the athletic fields, things that you could do more in phases. And again, that's very possible to do. I want to address one other thing just because it keeps coming up, and forgive me, this is not within the scope, but I do want to say it. I am 100% confident that we can offer a fabulous, rigorous education to our Lakeland students in this high school when we build it. And I just want to say that because we hear so much. People say, oh, no, you can't. You're not going to be able to compete, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to be as good as other options. I am telling you, I've said this, I worry about a lot of things. That's not something I worry about. Not the way that we're going about this. I want to tell you something else that's come up interesting recently. We're going to start pricing, pricing. We're going to have to start reporting per school costs, I think I said at the last meeting, publicly across the state. That's a new state requirement. That we're going to say, this is how much we spend per student, per school. There's a pilot that's been going on recently to start to cost those things. And this confirms what I suspected, but I didn't know. High school students are actually less expensive to educate than elementary school students. The classes are bigger. Most of the money that we spend is on salaries. High schools tend to have bigger classes. The cost per student goes down dramatically the bigger the school. So we are adding a high school and middle school both are less expensive to educate than elementary students, and we are adding numbers to an existing school. So again, in terms of money that would be available for operations, for instruction, for adding additional classes that we'd be interested in, we're talking about a two-school system that would have an average of between 1,100 and 1,200 students per school. There are many systems in the state of Tennessee that have an average of 350, 500 students per school. They don't benefit from that economy of scale that we would, and I'm very, very confident that this approach would result in great educational outcomes. But it is more expensive than it would have been 4.5 years ago. I have no reason to think it won't be even more expensive to do if we wait and do it later. So I believe that's the extent of what I was kind of asked to present, but I've certainly, what's that, was there one additional slide? Oh, I'm sorry, project timeline, thank you, that is not the extent. I was asked about the timeline. All right, and this was, again, this was a decision of the team. We talked about that really carefully. What can be done? What might be able to be done? What are you confident saying you could do if we get these funds? And thank you, this is important. Based on the time of year that it is now, okay, we're getting closer to spring. All right, and there's a couple of things to keep in mind about opening a school. You either hit August of that school year or you don't. You don't get to get close to it. Okay? It's either August or you don't. I've used the analogy of, those first space capsules that were going around the Earth. There's a spot where they wanted to re-enter, and they fire the jets then, and they're coming back in. And if they miss that, you've got to go all the way around again before you try it again. Or you're going to land somewhere you don't want to. Okay? So that's part of the issue. So when we're talking about how many months we have, it's a number of how many months, but it's also a matter of what months are they. So would we benefit, for example, if we started soon, would we benefit from this spring and summer building season? If we get the money after the summer's over, and we start construction in October or November of this year, that's a completely different ballgame than starting construction in June of this year, even though it's just a few months away. Okay, so that kind of sets up. Yes, based on where we are now, and then right now there is no commitment of funds, so we can at least all agree on that. Right now, there's no one saying this is where you're going to get the money and this is the money. We think the soonest we'd be able to open is August of 2022. If, and this was according to the team, if we got the funds in the next 60 to 90 days, and that's in hand, where we could set the architects and engineers loose, we could come up with construction documents, and this is still a maybe. If that happened, we would get back with the team and figure out, and they said maybe we could pull off August 2021. But a lot of things would have to go right. Okay? Most likely, we're looking at August of 2022. If we got the funds in the next 60 to 90 days, maybe it could be 2021. But we'd have to take another look at that. We agreed I was not going to hold the team to that number, so we left some wiggle room there. Okay. Is that the last slide? Okay. All right. Are there any questions for me? So I do have a little time.
I was going to ask real quick, sorry. You made any positive financial advantages of bringing the kids back here in-house?
Yeah, I've noted this, and I appreciate you asking. This was one of the premises that we were trying to make people aware of 4.5 years ago. So there's two, mainly. School systems are just given capital improvement funds by Shelby County. You don't know exactly when they're going to be. It depends on what Shelby County asks for. But when Shelby County asks for money, we get a cut of that, and it's based on our enrollment. And the more students we have, the bigger cut we get. And we're getting more money now that we have our middle school students back. We would get even more money as we started bringing the high school students back. That becomes money that we can set aside and start funding our own capital needs. And maybe even more significantly, there is also operational money that if you budget and expense, judiciously, you can set aside that money. And as I've said, most of the municipal schools have been able to set aside about 10 or 11% of their revenues every year into fund balance. If you have more revenues, I've found consistently it still winds up being about 10 or 11%. So 10 or 11% of 14 million is more than 10 or 11% of 7 million, okay, which is kind of where we start. We started with one elementary school, 7 million. By the way, the least efficient model to manage, it's most expensive per student, the elementary school, just one elementary school. If those revenues went up to about 20 million, we're most likely talking about 10 to 11% of 20 million. Not necessarily, but that's just what we've seen so far in the municipalities. If you have that situation, you're able to start banking money to take care of your own capital needs. And I want to say that, and I think they've done a great job with this. Arlington has benefited from that, Arlington Community Schools, and they've been able to, with cash, build a new central office. They've been able to do the new middle school gym and some fine arts building. They're contributing to the tennis courts in the city of Arlington. And now they're building the turf, indoor turf field. That's great. They've been able to do, and I think it's terrific. They've been able to do all that with cash that they put aside, not having to go to the Board of Commissioners and say, can we have the money for these things? I think this becomes critical as we start looking as we start looking to the next school. I've said this again, I'm repeating myself a little bit. This is not the last school we're going to talk about in Lakeland. And with these numbers growing the way they're growing, we've got the existing home sales picking up, more folks with families coming in, we've got new home construction that's going to start impacting. At some point, we're going to need another, whether you call it intermediate school or elementary school, that's coming. And we're either going to be able to help supplement that from our own accounts or we're not. And the balance would be asks of the Board of Commissioners. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Horrell, would it be fair to say that once we begin to bring our students back from Arlington to Lakeland, that we would be able to also raise our fund balance money and be able to perhaps pay cash for the running track and perhaps pay cash to build field houses and things, that if we are not able to do that on the front end, that's where you would bank your money to be able to afford those extras that high schools would love to have and that we eventually do want for our Lakeland students to have those things.
Yeah, that would obviously be at the discretion of the school board, but those are the types of options that become available. If you don't have the fund balance, you don't even have the conversation about what's the best way to utilize this. Or maybe put a portion aside for a future school and a portion towards those immediate needs.
And your statement about being able to educate high school students at a lesser amount than perhaps what the state funding, the BEP money is, that's also a way to bank money to be able to provide additional programs, additional furnishings, fixtures, technology, sending teachers for conferences to learn how to make our program unique, training teachers to do additional things that allow them to step out of their particular expertise. I have a music teacher that I've been able to send for training who now does coding with students. And we could utilize employees with that additional money by providing trainings for them to be able to offer some unique things for our Lakeland students. And to do that, you would be able to take that BEP fund. It's not taking as much of that fund per child to be able to educate them, so you do have money left over. So the key is getting our students back.
It is a key of being able to set aside additional funds that we would have the discretion to use. There's a huge amount of expenses at Lakeland Middle Prep that are already paid. They're already paid for. I won't go over all the staff. We're not hiring another finance director. We're not hiring, another clinic nurse most likely. We're not hiring another principal. Even the central office things. I hope we're not hiring another superintendent. A lot of these expenses have already been paid. Okay?
We can absolutely not hire another superintendent. You're locked in with
I
us.
appreciate that.
Thank you very much for answering that question.
One quick question. Just in 2015, were the numbers there for all the athletic facilities that you're actually
The numbers for the athletic facilities were there. Now, in 2015, the first time we did this, that total building size, and I'll point this out, was for 1750. Okay, so we have added on to the number of classrooms in the educational spaces. Okay, that's an important note. Yes, sir.
Dr. Earl, looking at the dates you have on the screen and looking at the presentation, as I've read through it at least 10 times today, I have a whole page of notes.
And this is the only part I did on the presentation.
Yeah, that's right. What do you project our ninth grade students enrollment population to be in 2021 and then in 2022? We're looking at those two dates specifically for us.
Okay, this is from the latest round from Dr. McKibben. Again, he hasn't even done the full report, so this is late breaking. All right, he had, for you said 2021?
Yeah.
2021, he's, for ninth graders, he's got 216 ninth graders, which is fairly consistent with the larger cohort sizes that we've got. Now, I do want to point out, that's just Lakeland ninth graders. That doesn't include, we have even additional students when we count the children of employees that are in there, so that doesn't include those. But he's got 216 in the ninth grade.
Do you have a projection for what it would be if we had to go with your date of 2022?
The 21-22, he's got 231. Yep.
Appreciate that.
That's all right. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. I'm
Thank you
stay as long
for
as I
your
can.
hard
So-
work on that.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to say I can appreciate the frustration of the board that if it may feel as if we were moving the goalposts and discussing something different. My job as a finance director, though, is to make sure that we are thinking about the impact of the school in its entirety, and to just think about a tax increase separate and apart from the impact it may have on our budget, I felt maybe wasn't the best way to attack this situation. And so we took the initiative to put this presentation together such that you guys would have as much information as possible to be able to make an informed decision. So I can understand how there's frustration, considering we've talked about this, some may feel ad nauseum, but I felt that a deeper dive perhaps would be warranted. And so that's why we spent the time to put this information together. So first I wanted to talk about the summary of the impact to the city if we were to construct a school. From a construction and engineering perspective, there's not much impact to the city. As Ted alluded to, the site work has been done. Most of the improvements to the land is already in existence. There's not a lot of effort or money that has to be spent in that regard, at least in regards to construction. What happens after construction remains to be seen, but from a construction standpoint, we think we're okay in terms of impact to the city. From an economic and financial standpoint, I wanted to summarize what I thought the best courses of action may be. This is separate and apart from what you guys have talked about publicly. Obviously, you have your own opinions, and it's within your purview to choose whatever course of action you feel is in the best interest of the city. This is just my opinion as to the 4 options that the city could consider and have a realistic opportunity to fund the school. And so those 4 options that we talked about, or I'm going to talk about, are general obligation bond, capital outlay note, a band, which is relatively new and we haven't really discussed before. So I'll spend some time talking about the intricacies of a band as well. And then just this morning, we had a conversation with the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and they are excited to offer us another opportunity. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to get that information and give it to you all before the presentation, but I'll be happy to circulate this after the fact. So, we also alluded to the fact that initially we were kicking around the idea of $35 million of project fund. Obviously, according to Ted, that's feasible, but that's the floor. My understanding was that $40 million was going to be the project fund, and so that's the number that I used to run the schedules, except where it's otherwise as noted in the presentation. I'd also like to point out that these amounts that I've put here on the slide are the amounts that are specific to debt service, meaning that any increase in city services or increase in city operations would necessarily require more money on top of that. These numbers here are just debt service numbers. I'd like to caveat that I do not believe that these are worst-case scenario numbers. I think these are reasonable assumptions as to where we might land if we were to proceed. So, I know we had that slide summarizing everything, but I want to take some time to talk about the supporting information. We're going to start with revenue collections, specifically property tax. So as we all know, property tax is the main driver of revenue within the city. As you can see from the slide here, it's relatively cyclical, meaning that you have a large percentage of taxpayers who pay their property tax in December in order to claim that on their current year income taxes. And of course, we have property tax payable in February. And so that's why you see those two abnormally large bars. The line graphs are supposed to represent percent change. And so basically what I'm trying to illustrate is if you have a number that's, say, hovering around 0, then that means that your collections every year is pretty constant. You are, collecting the same amount of money every year. If you have a number that's significantly negative, that means that your collections are decreasing. If you have a number that's significantly positive, it means your collections are increasing. What I would like to point out about this slide is if you look at the total row at the bottom of the chart, you can see that our property tax collections in this year were negative as compared, the percent change was negative as compared to last year. That may be cause for concern if we were to assume that that trend was going to continue. I don't think it will continue, and I think what may account for this negative trend is the fact that this is just property tax collections. This isn't property tax revenue generated. We often have collections that are due in February and aren't collected until the following March or April, June, July, what have you. So there are collection efforts to collect some of these taxes after the fact. So I don't want to necessarily alarm anyone, but I wanted to point that out. Additionally, the property tax collections on the slide are generated by the Shelby County Trustee's Office. So again, it's not property tax revenue, this is just collections. Dollars remitted to us from Shelby County, less their fee. So these may not foot to what you see in a CAFR or something of that nature, but I have the supporting reports if you guys are interested in seeing. Sales tax collections, I think what's important to note on this slide is the magnitude of the values. So if you looked at the property tax on the previous slide, we're looking at around $4 million. If you look at the values on this particular slide, you're looking at less than $1 million. So property tax is not really a significant driver of revenue within the city. Additionally, I think we have to consider property tax is capped by state statute. We have an option it's called a local option sales tax, and you can set it at 2.75. We've done that. It's maxed out. Can't go any higher. So it would be difficult to assume that sales tax would be able to mitigate any impact from debt service. And for those reasons, I've eliminated it from our consideration for this particular presentation. Of course, there are infinite permutations of these scenarios that we could have ran, right? Could have done a bond, a ban, could have done a con or a loan, you could have done it for 40 or 35, could have done it for 3% or 4%, could have assumed a downgrade, not assumed a downgrade, infinite permutations, right? So I did what I thought made the most amount of sense, and what I could think would be a realistic outcome. So it's conservative by nature. Obviously, if we were to choose one of these options and move forward, I would do my best to make sure that we firmed up the estimates such that they weren't unduly conservative, if that makes sense. The other thing I'd like to point out about both sales tax and property tax, sales tax is necessarily susceptible to economic turmoil, specifically in the short run. So if you are to experience an economic downturn, you can't really rely on sales tax revenue to generate any kind of revenue, because the first thing everybody's going to do is tighten it up. No more movies, no more eating out, no more shoes, no more video games. It hurts me because I'm a video game guy. But, so you just have to consider that as a potential possibility and understand that if the economy was to change, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to assume or to factor that into your numbers. Luckily, property tax, in the short run at least, is not typically beholden to economic pressure. So to the extent that there's a downturn, people usually don't default on their mortgage. Obviously, 2008 was an outlier, but typically, most people don't default on their mortgage, will continue paying that. Obviously, in the long run, they can make more drastic decisions, whether they move, whether they burn down their house for insurance proceeds, whatever that may be, I don't know. But typically, they're not susceptible to economic pressure. So, I also wanted to take some time to talk about existing debt service, just so we knew where we are and where we might end up at some point in the future. I've alluded to this, several times, but there are a handful of loans that we have outstanding. Most of these loans are variable rate. The TMBF 50236, that's related to roads. I believe that's what Vice Mayor Roman was considering taking out with reserve fund money. We also have a 50538 that's also related to roads. That was not originally included as part of the debt with which we would eliminate with reserve fund money. We have a building settlement with Shelby County Schools. I'm not sure of the backstory behind that, but I'm assuming it has something to do with when Lakeland made their own school system, that they had to pay Shelby County for the schools. That's my best guess.
That's correct.
Okay. So that's a pretty, I wouldn't say substantial, but a fair amount of money. We have a TLDA loan that's related to Beverly Rivera, if I remember correctly. That's still in its non-principal paying phase, although we had a conversation today which may lead me to believe that it will shortly become payable. I'm not sure what that impact looks like in terms of debt service. We haven't really had a chance to think about that. But as of right now, this is just interest only on this loan, no debt service, no principal associated with it. And then, of course, the 2015 capital outlay note, and that gives you an outlook of our current debt service. So as you can see from the slide, it's a fairly aggressive debt repayment schedule. A lot of money going out the door in the next couple of years, but that's well within our budget. We've already accounted for that, and so that's not a concern from a cash flow perspective.
Kyle?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm having to look at my close-up because I can't see that. Would you please tell me one more time, the TMBF 50236, what is that?
That's related to roads.
Okay, and then the TMBF 50538?
Also roads. I believe there was a small allotment of that loan, that loan that was attributable to fire efforts, but I don't know that it was a significant portion of that loan. I think most of it was for roads.
And then the TLDA?
TLDA was loans, roads as well.
Okay.
So as you can see, spent a lot of money on roads. So the next slide that we're going to talk about is preliminary assumptions. I want to emphasize that these assumptions, of course, are preliminary, subject to change. Market movement has a significant factor in these assumptions. Project fund amount has a significant impact in these assumptions. All of those things should be considered, and these numbers should not be considered gospel, but rather just a snapshot in time. This is what it looks like right now. If we change assumptions, obviously all this is going to change. But I just wanted to make sure we're clear that these are assumptions. Further, I wanted to spend some time maybe talking about some bond nomenclature, which I'm sure is how you want to spend your Thursday evening. But I think it's critical for us to understand some of the nomenclature so that we can maybe dispel some of the differences of opinion in regards to what happened in 2015. So obviously I've started with the four options that we talked about earlier: the general obligation bond, the note, the band, bond, hybrid, and then the USDA loan. And so what you'll see across most of them is that all of them are about $40 million for the project fund, with the exception of the USDA loan, that's $60 million. More realistically, that number is probably somewhere closer to 55. And that project fund specifically for the USDA loan is the $40 million for the school, the new money construction, and then the refunding of the 15 note. The USDA loan is essentially a loan from the federal government. It's not a bond, it's not a note. That's an important distinction in this particular case because the concern was if we refunded the 2015 note right now, there would be a tax status change. And that tax status change would be costly. With the note, that's no longer, with the USDA loan, that's no longer a concern. So you could theoretically, if you so desire, issue this loan and pay off the 15 note and still have the proceeds and not incur that negative tax status change penalty. Does that make sense? So $40 million universally assumed except for the USDA loan. When I say par amount is essentially the stated value of the bonds. So if you issue a bond for $1 million, that bond has a par amount of $1 million. When I say premium is the amount of money someone is willing to pay you above and beyond the stated value of that bond. Why they're willing to pay you that money is, I can explain it if you want, but it's a little beyond the scope of our presentation. Essentially, they value that bond more than its stated value. So they're willing to pay you a premium. Much like, I hate flying, so I'm willing to pay Amtrak a premium to get on the train because I value that mode of transportation more than I value flying. Does that make sense? So there's also discount bonds. Those are less common, but not uncommon, but less common than premium bonds. Discount is the other way, meaning that someone doesn't value your bond as much as the stated value. If you have a bond that stated value is $100, I'm only giving you $90 because I think it's not worth $100. In this particular case, we're only talking about par bonds. There are no discount bonds, but I just wanted to make that clear. We're only talking about premium bonds, not discount bonds. So then we also have refunding par and refunding premium. They're much the same as new money par, new money premium, but the distinction being they're specifically for bonds that are called refunding bonds, meaning you are issuing a new bond to take out an old bond that was already in existence. And then these acronyms at the bottom, MADS, is just max annual debt service. That's simply how much you're going to pay, the maximum value you're going to pay over the course of the amortization of this particular loan. That's debt service, meaning principal and interest. When I calculate the tax rates, I'm using the MADS value. So, of course, that can be changed. Maybe you can use the average annual debt service, which is the next number down there, as a more accurate representation of what that property tax increase or decrease or whatever you guys decided to do may be. Specifically, I use MADS because it gives us a conservative estimate of where we should set the property tax rate such that we are able to cover the debt service for the duration of the bond. There is no point where the debt service is higher than what we've assumed, and so we should be sufficient enough in our assumptions to cover that debt service. If you use average annual debt service, there could be a year where you hit that perfect storm and the economy's in the toilet and you don't have enough money, you're not generating as much sales tax revenue, maybe people are moving out of the city and you have your maximum annual debt service occur that year. That's ultimately a distinction that the board can make. Whatever number you guys want me to use is the number that I'll use. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood the values that I'm using to derive the numbers in this presentation. And of course, TIC. TIC is an important acronym because it's confusing. So essentially, when you think about a loan, you have one stated interest rate, right? You get a mortgage from Rocket Mortgage, for example, they're going to tell you, hey, you have 5% interest rate, and that's your interest rate. If you have a bond, though, you don't have one stated interest rate. You have a series of interest rates that amortize over time. So you can't necessarily say the interest rate should be 5% because the question necessarily becomes, well, in what year is the interest rate 5%? So the TIC is a calculation that most bond professionals use. Sometimes they use the A, the all-in TIC, but it's usually a variation of one of those two numbers. And it basically it's called the true interest cost because it closely approximates the interest rate at which you, not closely approximate, it exactly equals the interest rate at which you would be indifferent between borrowing money at this rate and issuing these bonds, if that makes sense. So the math behind it is relatively complicated. Happy to walk you guys through it. We'll need a calculator, probably Excel, but we can do it. But for our purposes today, just know that it's essentially the rate at which you're going to borrow. So issuance criteria, I just wanted to arm you guys with this information so everybody understood what the possible issuance criteria would be. So in regards to the bond, the ban, bond hybrid, let me back up for a second. So the bond ban hybrid is something new that we haven't really discussed with the board before, but I wanted to take a second to explain how that works. So a ban is essentially a short-term financing mechanism that's available within the state of Tennessee, meaning that you guys could choose to short-term issue $40 million, and you pay a 2-year rate on that $40 million, or $35 million, whatever the decision of the board is. But the difference is, instead of issuing long-term debt for X number of years at, say, let's say a 4.18 TIC, you're issuing $40 million for 2 years at what's likely going to be the 2-year spot rate, so somewhere around 2% and some change. So there's debt service savings that you guys are able to accomplish in those first 2 years. Additionally, once those 2 years elapse, the board would have the discretion to authorize whatever kind of long-term financing mechanism that would be, they would choose to issue. That could be a bond, that could be a ban, that could, or excuse me, it could be a ban theoretically, but it could be a bond or a note or another loan at some point in the future. Or cash, you could pay it off with cash if you happen to have $40 million in 2 years, that's possible. The reason the ban came to mind as a possible option was because there was concern about refunding the 2015 note immediately, and the tax status change, and the fact that it's not currently callable. So the ban mitigates some of the concerns surrounding the 2015 note. You still are able to issue the money today, such that TED is able to start construction. You eliminate the construction cost risk. You mitigate the interest rate risk, and in the short term at least, because you lock it in for 2 years. Obviously, 2 years later, you'd have to reconsider and say, hey, we're going to do a bond, are we going to do a ban, are we going to roll this ban, can extend it? That's what I mean by roll. We're going to do a note. So it's a hybrid plan that really allows you guys to think about, okay, well, if this is a concern, meaning this being the status of the 2015 note, maybe that's not a concern if we do the ban. Ultimately up to you, just an option that I thought made a lot of sense. Issuance criteria, this is basically giving you guys some insight into how you would actually statutorily go about issuing the bonds. With the exception of the note, all of the bonds or all of the options necessarily consider a initial resolution period, and obviously an initial resolution period is followed by the ability of the citizens to decide whether or not they are in favor or against this particular issuance. That takes the form of a protest period. If 10% of the population signs a petition, it would trigger a referendum. Obviously, that referendum traditionally happens during a scheduled election event. In this particular case, I don't believe there's a scheduled election event, so it would probably trigger a special election. You could, theoretically, let me back up. So then you have state approval. So the state comptroller's office, director of state and local finance, would have authority to approve or disapprove whatever plan that the board deems prudent, with the exception of the loan, the USDA loan. The state does not have any approval over that. That's just an agreement between the city and the federal government, but all the other options consider that the state would have to approve it. And finally, the issuance type, that just speaks to how the bonds or bans or notes or what have you would be issued. When I say public, that essentially means that the city goes out to a public marketplace, not physically goes out, but there's an internet portal where we can go put our bonds, bans, notes, loans, without, not a loan, but bonds, bans, notes on this particular portal, and people will bid and the low-cost TIC wins the bid, meaning that whoever is the cheapest option wins the bid. In a private auction, or an auction is a poor term, in a private issuance, typically that's a negotiation between the city and whoever they deem appropriate to sell those particular obligations to. With the case of the USDA loan, obviously it's private to an extent, but it's private between you and the federal government. So there's no solicitation of bids from anyone. So I put together this slide about the revised debt service, just so we can kind of visually see what the impact to the existing, what the impact may be. So you could compare this graph to the existing debt service slide that we saw previously. But essentially, I really just wanted to illustrate the fact that in this particular case, a GO bond from a cash flow perspective is a GO bond from a cash flow perspective may make sense, meaning that the impact to the cash flow of the city would be relatively minimal. The average debt burden to the city is manageable in my opinion. This particular slide necessarily regulates, I guess, the amount of, the bars necessarily represent the property tax increase. So, for example, if we were to say 30 cents, right? I forget what the number was that I said before in the slide. Well, let's just assume I said 30 cents. And that number is represented here. Then what you're saying is that, okay, if I just issue or just increase property tax 30 cents, I get exactly enough money to cover this amount of debt service for the next 30 years, right? So that if any projects in the future, any growth in the city would necessarily require another tax increase or a reduction in city services in order to cover that additional cost. So I wanted to make that clear in this particular slide. In relation to the bond, you also have the capital outlay note. And again, this is a fairly aggressive repayment schedule, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about it from a total debt service perspective. From a total debt service perspective, because you're amortizing the debt so quickly, the total debt service obviously is the least in this particular case. However, cash flow, meaning the amount of money you have to pay annually, is the most. So this would, necessarily require maybe more increase in debt service, but more increase in property tax, but that property tax, if it was a will of the board, could theoretically be rolled back much sooner. So a consideration in this particular case. What I did want to point out is that this particular case does not assume a refunding of the 2015 note because of the concerns that we mentioned earlier, the tax status change, the fact that it's not currently callable. So that's why this number on this page graphically looks so much more significant than the other scenarios that I've outlined here. To the extent that you guys would want to see a scenario where the 2015 note is refunded, I'm happy to put that together. I didn't do it here just because I wanted to focus on the 4 scenarios that I thought made the most amount of sense. And that was, in my opinion, this was that scenario. Happy to modify it however you guys desire. So this next slide illustrates the ban impact on debt service. This one, this scenario assumes no immediate refunding of the 2015 note, but it does assume that in 2 years, when the note becomes currently callable, that it's refunded. And so you'll see in the first couple years of the ban, lower debt service, and then of course, it kind of ticks up there in year 3 and 4, because that's when the full long-term obligation is coming online. Also, the ban, because you have a 2-year short-term financing period, and then you issue a 30-year bond after that, assumes a 2-year longer amortization period than the bond option. But again, you could theoretically choose a 28-year bond or 29-year bond or whatever the board desires. So, as I alluded to, multiple permutations. I just simply did the ones that I thought made the most sense. And then This slide that you guys don't have in your packets, my apologies, is the USDA slide. This particular slide assumes a 40-year amortization project, a 40-year amortization of the project. That's the maximum that the USDA would allow us to utilize, or allow any issuer to utilize. What's important to note about the fact that it's 40 years as opposed to 30 is obviously the longer you can amortize the debt, then the less debt you pay in any debt service you pay in any particular year. Meaning from a cash flow perspective, the impact to your budget may be better than some other scenarios. However, because you are amortizing this over a longer period of time, total debt cost in the long run is probably greater. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So the next slide that I wanted to talk about was operational expenses. And I put this slide in here strictly to be informational. I understand that we are currently not in the budget process, but the budget process is literally right around the corner. And we're gonna have to start talking about this sooner or later. And so my goal here was to simply educate the board as to what city staff thinks may be necessary in the short run, meaning 2 or 3 years down the road. And these are the expenses that we see coming up. Obviously, we work within the confines of whatever revenue we're able to generate. So if the revenue isn't sufficient enough to meet some of these services, then we will have to make the hard calculus of deciding which services we're going to offer now and in the future. But ultimately, again, the decision that remains up to you guys. But just mostly for informational purposes, wanted to share that with you. So the next slide, the increase in property tax is necessary. Again, this is my best assumption based on the 4 scenarios that I ran, which can be modified in a myriad of ways, that shows the impact to property tax. What I'd like to point out is, based on the slide 21, short-term operating increases, that in addition to this particular property tax rate, which again could be modified, the city would also request 10 cents of additional property tax to ensure that the city has the continued ability to grow and offer more services. Obviously, the numbers that were in the summary and the numbers on this slide do not contemplate that 10 cent, but I wanted to make sure that we were articulating what we thought made the most sense for the city. So the next slide, the property tax reduction schedule.
Question.
Yes.
So you did include the additional 10 or you did not?
On the increase in property tax, we did not include the additional 10 cents.
Okay.
This is property tax strictly attributable to the debt service.
Okay, thank you.
Also there's 2 rows there. I'm sorry, go back one slide. So the 2 rows there, one is a $40 million project fund, one is a $35 million project fund. So that's why there's 2 separate pots of information. We also thought about a reduction in the roads budget, which you'll see on the summary slide. There's, I think, 16 different boxes on that particular chart. But it's a $40 million project fund, a $35 million project fund, and each of those 2 scenarios by financing mechanism. And then we also include the impact of a $600,000 reduction to the roads budget. I picked $600,000 because that was expressed to be the amount of reduction that would leave enough money in the roads budget to still be considered effective maintenance of our roads.
What is that number that they require us to keep in that fund?
I think if with the $600,000 reduction, that contemplates a $800,000. No, I'm sorry. So right now it's $1.2 million, so $600,000 reduction puts it at $600,000.
Okay.
I think going forward, we probably want to think about increasing that number. 600 is the minimum. Obviously, if it's at 500 or 400, the city will do what the city can do with that amount of money, but it would be difficult. So the next slide, the property tax reduction schedule simply shows a hypothetical situation where we may consider setting a property tax at some point in the future. This does not contemplate any additional projects coming on. Does not contemplate any additional city staff services, or operations. This is simply today, if everything stayed constant, here's where we could be at some point in the future based on how I see the debt amortizing. I don't see a reduction in city services happening, at least I didn't contemplate it for these particular slides. So again, purely hypothetical. What's important to note here is that this new property tax rate at the top includes the 1.25 current property tax rate, includes the 10 cents that I'm asking for city operations, and includes the appropriate amount of increase in property tax for the debt service attributable to these particular scenarios. The next slide, the property tax reduction schedule, assuming reduction in city services. So this is a slide I was alluding to earlier. Reduction in the roads budget is essentially 17 cents. That's $600,000 reduction in the road budget. It's approximately 17 cents worth of property tax, or a 17-cent equivalent of property tax. And so I basically just backed out 17 cents from the numbers that are on the previous slide. Obviously, we could back out whatever amount you guys felt was appropriate to, generate whatever number you wanted us to be in. But I wanted to show the impact of what this debt service may look like without contemplating any reduction in city services. But I also wanted to be a little more realistic, contemplate what this debt may look like with a reduction in city services. And so that's what you'll see on these two slides. This last slide, property tax rates of comparable communities. I put this slide in here specifically to illustrate the fact that it is difficult to measure the city of Lakeland in relation to other communities within Shelby County. And the reason is really twofold. First, it's our population size. Obviously, we all want services like fire and police and whatever else, leaf collection within our city. But Bartlett has 5 times as many people as we do. So to the extent that individual taxpayers in Lakeland are willing to pay five times as much property tax, we can have those services. But to the extent that they're not, then we have to really consider what's within a reasonable property tax for residents of our city, and understand that property tax levy necessarily only gives us X amount of money, and our services are contingent upon how much revenue we have coming in. So I understand that we want to make sure that we are offering the best services to our city and our citizens at a cost-effective price. But at the same time, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that our population is such currently that our revenue generating ability is relatively minimal. That's just the unfortunate truth of the situation. And so we get enough people in here that we can generate massive amounts of revenue. The other point that I wanted to point out is that this particular slide, this 1.25 number, does not contemplate the fire fee. The fire fee is approximately $2 million a year, which is approximately 57 cents on a property tax equivalent rate. So if you were to think about that in conjunction with this number here, it's I think it's 180, 183, somewhere in there. The reason why I would argue that it is difficult to necessarily say what the property tax equivalent rate may be with the fire fee is because of the difference in how the fire fee is calculated. So for example, if you have a 2,000 square foot home, your fire fee is calculated based on the square footage of your home. Well, if you have a 2,000 square foot home, but it happens to be a dump, and it's only worth $1,000, then your property tax is calculated based on your assessed value. So if you have a spacious home that isn't worth a lot of money, then your equivalent rate won't necessarily, I was going to say equivalent, but that's not a word, equal. So some people will be paying more, depending on how that discrepancy works out, and some people will be paying less. So you can say that it's an equivalent property tax rate just for conversational purposes, so we understand where Bartlett is and where we are, but to an individual taxpayer, their property tax rate equivalent may be higher or lower than that number that we are talking about.
Would that be the effective tax rate? Would that be a better term for that?
It would be an effective tax rate per citizen, I guess. You'd have to calculate it per, whichever individual citizen you're talking about, because there's no way to standardize how much an individual's home is worth versus how big their home is worth. If you have, Jamaican stucco, I don't know if that's the thing, but if you have Jamaican stucco in your home and I have sheetrock, and we have the same size house, your home is probably a little more expensive than mine. So it's, your property tax equivalent rate will be different than mine. That doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a fair way to compare us to other communities, but I wanted to make sure we were all aware the difference in calculation may be skewing when you look at it on an individual basis.
What about the difference in services that the other communities provide? That number, their number includes fire and police.
Absolutely.
In high school.
Absolutely. And I'm not disputing that. I'm not saying that our property tax rate should be lower or higher or any of that. Ultimately, that decision is yours. I'm just simply articulating the fact that in order to be at a comparable level of services to a Bartlett or to a Collierville, you can't look at their property tax rate and say, well, if they're at 183, we should be at 183. We have 5 times less people. So necessarily, our property tax rate to equal the same amount of revenue would have to be 5 times as high. So if the individual taxpayer in the city of Lakeland, I'm unincorporated Shelby County, so I'm not biased in this regard. But if the taxpayer of the city of Lakeland is willing to incur 5 times as much property tax, they can have all the services that Bartlett offers. But understanding that that's probably unrealistic, then we have to make sure that we understand why, our property tax rate in comparison to Bartlett and Collierville isn't necessarily a fair comparison. In all likelihood, it's probably, fairer to say it's closer to Arlington or Millington, considering their population. I don't know what services Arlington or Millington offers. I don't know what services Bartlett and Collierville offer. But I wanted to point that out, that a property tax comparison, just, property tax rate to property tax rate isn't necessarily the only way to compare the comparable municipalities. And with that, I've bored you enough, so I will take any questions you may have.
Yeah, real quick, sorry. So in the presentation, the numbers are basically assuming no increased revenue from sales tax,
Correct.
property tax, things like that.
Correct.
Okay.
The reason I excluded sales tax is because on slide 11, so sales tax is showing a positive trend for the last 30 years, right? That's a great sign. That means the city of Lakeland is growing, we're having development come in, people are spending their dollars here. That's an excellent sign. However, in an effort to be conservative, and because understanding that sales tax is necessarily volatile, I excluded that from the assumptions within this PowerPoint. Of course, we can add it in and look at the impact that they may have, but if we were to do that, and in the event that the economy were to change, sales tax is likely the first thing that's going to be impacted. So if we're relying on sales tax for a significant portion of that debt service, and sales tax revenue isn't there, the city has to make that up out of general fund. And that may, impact our ability to pay for grants and move forward, or things of that nature. I'd also, if I could just interject, I'd also point out, the original presentation that the Vice Mayor put together contemplated removing TMBF 50236 in the Shelby County settlement. And so I assumed for all 3 scenarios that those obligations were also eliminated, but I assumed they were eliminated from debt proceeds as opposed to general fund dollars. And the reason I did that was to make sure that in the case of grants or city hall improvements that I articulated on one of these slides, that we would be able to pay for those if necessary out of general fund dollars. Obviously, again, that's the discretion of the board. To the extent that y'all don't want to see that or want to see something completely different, we can run those scenarios. but I did what I thought was appropriate in this particular case.
So I made a comment of worst case scenario. You said this wasn't worst case scenario. I'm sure as a risk manager, you imagine something much worse happening, like a crash or something. However, the reason why I said this is worst case scenario is because we started off with a slide that showed lower taxes and that was a negative thing in the property tax collection. But it was easily accounted for with actually a tax decrease to the city. Then we eliminated the sales tax, which is roughly 20% of our revenue. I can understand wanting to be conservative, but eliminating the entire sales tax. Several times you mentioned that we could do this again without being unduly conservative, which means that there had to be a notion of being ultra conservative in your calculations. Does not include paying off the debt, however, it does include rolling up the debt for additional bond proceeds without offsetting the income or the additional payment by paying it off, right?
No, it does contemplate paying off additional debt service. You'll see that on the tax repayment schedule.
I know, but it hits you twice. It hits you twice because it pays it off with your bond proceeds, so therefore it increases the amount of your payment.
That's true.
Yeah, so that's, you get hit on both sides.
I would not necessarily categorize it as being hit on both sides. I would categorize it as whether you choose to use funds today or funds in the future. That's a decision that the board would have to make. But as I articulated before, the reason why I decided to include that in bond proceeds as opposed to general fund revenues, unassigned fund balance, is because we do have a significant number of projects that we're going to undertake in the near future. So sure, we could pay off the debt today with reserve fund dollars and have to bond fund those projects in the future.
I'm sure you have a reason for every calculation.
Absolutely.
I don't want to sit here and argue. I just want to make the point that you made a significant number of conservative calculations. You eliminated the sales tax. The ultra conservative does not include paying off debt, or includes paying off debt, but it rolls it up into an additional payment, which is accounted for in additional taxes. You did include a rating downgrade, as noted in your footnotes. You did include a 15% market fluctuation, or 15 basis points market fluctuation, and a basically 10 points market fluctuation and 15% rating downgrade, which added 1/4%. So again, 1/4% on 4% is almost an 8% increase in the amount of your calculation. You also calculated it at the very end, the city growing by 10 cents a year in taxes, roughly.
Just one time.
Just one time. But we pay the taxes every year, correct?
Correct. But it's not 10-cent levy, an additional 10-cent levy every year. It's just a one time.
But an additional 10 cents.
Sure.
You included you mentioned 600,000 as a minimum for roads. The history of our city actually shows a minimum for roads around 50 to 100,000. I would love to see 600,000 on a minimum for roads, but the history of our city states that's just not realistic. So anyway, my point is that yes, we could envision worst case scenarios, but yes, this was very conservative calculation.
Again, I would not categorize this as worst case scenario. My job as a finance director for a city that doesn't generate revenue outside of property tax is to ensure that the city can run fairly and efficiently and provide services to its citizens without an undue burden. So what I've done is, in an effort to educate everyone as to what I feel may be appropriate, is to set a baseline. That's where I think we should be. If we don't end up there, we can operate within whatever parameters you guys deem fair. But to the extent that those parameters don't match what I have articulated, obviously I've built a buffer because I don't want to pick some number and then be under that number and then not be able to fund the city. I picked a number that I thought made a lot of sense. If it comes down below that, we'll do the hard calculus of deciding what services we are able to offer. Ultimately, that decision is up to you. So I wouldn't characterize it as unduly conservative.
But you did.
No, I want you guys to know that if you think it's unduly conservative, I can modify it. But in my opinion, this is a fair and reasonable estimate as to where property taxes should be.
For a growing area.
Sure.
Anybody else? I'll wrap it up. Kyle, I just want to say thank you. And there's one thing that you said early on, that you said you took a common sense approach. You can call it conservative, you can call it liberal, you can call it whatever you want. You said common sense, and I appreciate that about you. You took this bull by the horns, you saw numbers. You're the one that's responsible. If you say it's not conservative and we strip it down to the bare minimums, and you're wrong, you're the first one that's going to get blamed, and that's not fair to you. And I would respect anybody in any position to do what they need to do to be conservative, because we're talking about, once again, taxpayer dollars. This comes out of every one of our pockets. So I applaud you for being ultra conservative, because that's what we need to start looking at. This city's been running reckless for too many years. We need to start pinching every penny we can and doing things right for each and every person in this city. It's not just one group or another, it's everybody. Couple of other things. I already know the answer to this, but I want to ask you, especially when you're talking about being conservative about things. In 2015, when this board was up here talking about borrowing $50 million, and they said they could do it for a 55-cent tax increase, was that enough money to fund the $50 million bond? I know the answer, so I don't want to put you on the spot.
Ultimately,
That's a loaded question. And
Let him speak. Let him speak.
the reason why I said.
Point of order.
Point of order.
I disagree with point of order. This is.
Well, that's too bad. I'm running
Let him
this meeting.
speak.
No, you're not.
I'm running the meeting, and if you don't think so, I can have that gentleman remove you. You want to read Robert's rules? You want me to read the rules of order to you?
I object to the decision of the chair.
Too bad. Kyle, the number was $1.10. That's twice what we were told as citizens, and I was a taxpaying citizen then, that we could build a middle school and a high school for 55 cents. That's why you being conservative is important to me, and it's important to each and every one of the people out there in this city that is paying their taxes every day. Okay?
to be fair, Mr. Mayor, I would say that the board operated within their purview to set the tax rate at what they felt was appropriate.
I understand that point of it. I'm just saying it wasn't enough money.
I can't disagree or agree with their decision. Their decision was ultimately their decision to make.
Fair enough. I just want us to deal with facts and figures and real numbers, and that's what you gave us tonight, and I applaud you for doing that, and I thank Shane for stepping up and being a manager of this city and actually giving the initiative to do what he needed to do. I'm going to take all this back, and I'm going to digest it too, because I know that there's going to be, my email's going to be blowing up. Well, this isn't right, and that's not right. I just want to make sure that everybody out there has the facts and the numbers, so that when we make a decision, that we're doing what's in the best interest of everybody out there. So I just want to make that crystal clear. Thank you, and we'll move on.
I'm not ready to leave this discussion yet.
I'll be real quick. December 2017, do you agree with the numbers you're running by then?
Sorry, say that again.
December 2017, do you agree with the numbers?
The numbers in December of
You
2017.
were in the mix then
Yes.
when we were talking about trying to build a school.
Yes. So, I've been in the mix since 2015, whether it was as a consultant of PFM or as an employee of the city. I agree that the information that PFM provided was accurate to the best of its ability at that particular time. I agree with the numbers that they continue to provide is accurate to the best of their ability within that time. I would say that there are a number of assumptions that have to be considered when we're talking about these things. And if those assumptions change, the numbers necessarily change. Whether those assumptions are made clear to everyone, I can't speak to that. I wasn't privy for all of those board meetings, nor was I employee of the city. So I'm not sure what assumptions were necessarily put forth or contemplated once the schedules were created. So I can't necessarily confirm nor deny whether those numbers were appropriate, outside of the fact that the schedules created were correct, based on our assumptions.
May I ask a question? Okay, so I'm looking on slide 5 where Dr. Horrell says that if funding is appropriated in the next 60 to 90 days, and there are no delays, that the school could be completed August of 2021. And Mayor, were you saying at the last meeting that you thought that the school, your stake in the ground was 2021?
Nope.
2022?
August of 2022.
22, so one more year. In your financial expertise, do you see anything greatly changing within 1 year?
There's no way I can answer that question.
Other than construction costs?
Construction costs could increase, the economy could tend, interest rates could increase.
So we're not gonna, I mean, there are a lot of what ifs with what we're seeing today.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of what ifs for what we're going to be seeing in the future. So in my mind, 1 year, I mean, in 60 to 90 days, if we give Dr. Horrell the go-ahead and just projected without any delays, any issues that may cause, we're still coming up 1 year short of what you're proposing, Mayor Cunningham. And respectfully, I don't see where that is going to make much difference in anything we're seeing right now, because we know that the build out of the commons is at least 2 years. We can't even say really what we're gonna see with the Lake District. We know that we have several housing subdivisions coming on board, but we still may not even see much growth within a year. So in my mind, I'm seeing where it really wouldn't make a whole lot of difference if we're gonna be sitting here looking at this same presentation in February of 2020, and we're still gonna be looking at this same issue, and we're going to be looking at increased construction costs and additional things that we have to deal with. So 1 year difference is not a lot in my mind, because we know we're gonna build a school. You said you wanted to do that. And we need to find a way to go ahead and in the next 60 to 90 days, do what we can in the best interest of the city, as well as the children of our community, to go ahead and get this rolling. And we'll just have to deal with what we have to deal with for a year or two until we can refinance at a longer term. And then that way we're cutting the costs of what we are required to pay on an annual basis. And we will then be seeing housing subdivisions come about, but we'll still have the school that will be the draw. So yes, that question you couldn't answer. However, with the risk that we take by waiting, we already saw an additional $12 million cost by waiting 2 years from the last time these numbers were crunched, as was stated in the school board meeting on Monday night. So that is a huge concern to me, that we don't take that risk of having an additional, in 2 years, $12 million. So in 1 year, another $6 million. So I think that we need to seriously consider looking at an option that we can currently afford and getting this school out of the ground, even if it is 1 year prior to what you're saying, because that 1 year is only going to make a difference in what we can't say. Now we know we have some things that we know about, but those are not in stone either. So thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
What we're not talking here, folks, is the impact of senior citizens, like me, fixed income. I got a raise in my military retirement this year, and I got a raise in my Social Security. all right? The increase in taxes we're talking about, we'll wipe that out, and then some, in my case. And I'm speaking for the massive numbers of senior citizens we have in this city who have been here long before us, who've been here when the amusement park was here. In some cases, they were here before the amusement park. And you need to stop and think how we're going to impact those folks. We've got a lot of houses going up. There's some next to my neighborhood, and they're going to be in the range of $350,000. This tax increase, but whatever we do, we need to realize it's going to impact the ability of that developer to sell that home. And then finally, we're a small city. I sincerely believe we'll start pushing people to their limits to where they can go to Fayette County. They can go anywhere. So they go back, or they might want to go to Germantown, pay for it, and they'll get all the services there. And they're paying almost equivalent rate in Lakeland and not getting all the services. The mayor and I ran on a platform that we will have a high school we can afford. And we've also said when we're going to do it. But we've got to find a way to make sure we protect those in our community who are going to be really affected by a tax increase like this. We kind of just talk around it like it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, because this is a significant increase. It's not a dime, 10 cents. Okay? So please, we've got people on both sides of the issue over here. And that's why it's essential we work together to find a way to make this work where we don't affect our senior citizens, the people who have really invested their lives in this city. I'm a new guy, but there's a lot of them here who have been here for a long, long time. And I think we're literally going to slap them in the face if we we'll start losing people. And that's just the Gonzalez opinion. Thank you.
First of all, I understand that anytime that you're in disagreement, you come off looking a little unruly. My goal is to speak exactly what I feel like I've been put up here to say, as far as to speak as what's been put on my heart and mind. I hope I don't come across disrespectful, but I do feel like I need to say my piece. First of all, as far as procedure goes, Robert's Rules calls for the ability to appeal the decision of the chair at any time, which can receive a second and 3 votes. So any decision made by the chair is able to be overturned. So that's the first one. Second of all, I felt like the question was unfair because it assumed that the tax rate by itself was meant to substantiate the payment of the debt. And anytime we add additional revenues, it's basically additional revenues, which means you take a look at the totality of your payments, your totality of your income. So that was the reason why I thought the question was unfair. And third of all, this is not meant to an attack in any way. I started this conversation the middle of December with basically 2 parameters. I said basically this is what I felt like the new payment would be. This is exactly what we're currently paying now. And I was hoping we could come together with some ideas of how we could make up the middle, where the additional revenue, regardless. And I was excited because the battle cry I kept here being touted by you, Mr. Mayor, was that, I quoted, FedEx pays me to find complex solutions. And so my goal, working with the new people in the administration, was to say, this is what I know to be true. The current payment and what I believe the future payment would be. And I was hoping to come up with solutions. So in January, I showed up. I basically didn't have anything. I was hoping that we would have solutions being presented. It was just more talk. So we talked in December, talked more in January, and I was actually kind of put on the hot seat and said, Josh, we haven't seen a presentation by you. I'm a numbers guy. I'm more than willing to put a presentation out there. I didn't want it to be my idea. I didn't want it to be because I understand the 2 sides. I was hoping we would see a solution. We did not see a solution, so I brought together some ideas, which I thought was thorough and creative and, hopefully got us to where we needed to be. assuming we were all willing to make sacrifices, and I started the conversation with that. And then I showed up to this meeting, and there's still no plan. It's more talk. I get what I feel like is a competing vision of growing city government, of ultra-conservativeness. I can understand where there may be disagreement, but I just felt like it was a competing vision. But I still don't feel like we're any closer to our end goal. So if there's no other vision or idea put out there, and my idea and vision was the only one put out there to look at possible funding options, then we need to, Mr. Manager, start putting together the paperwork and vote on that option. So, that being said, that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Just going to follow that up real quick. The company I work for does not make decisions in a month. They don't make decisions in 2 or 3 months. They find solutions that are the right solutions, and they take time. I am absolutely spending 80+ hours a week going through data and facts and information. I want to know where this city sits financially. I've put Shane and Kyle and even Emily and the other staff, Kevin, through vigorous emails. I need to know this. I need to know where we are with this program and that program. Because it's an all-inclusive city. It's not about one thing and it's not about another. The reason I hesitate with this whole funding thing, why does it have to be in the next 60 days? It's February of 19 right now. Everybody can do math with the calendar. If you look at 60 days from now, you're in April of 19. When you're in April of 22, that's 3 years from now. Why are we trying to borrow money in 60 days? It doesn't make sense. We don't know how much we're going to need to borrow. There are a lot of factors moving around financially. That's why I don't have a plan. I want to find the solution. I put a stake in the ground, and I believe that working with Ted and Kevin out here, that we have at least a concept going. And it's going to take more than me just waving a magic wand, because I can tell you, in this city, a magic wand don't work, and I'm tired of people trying to wave it. So it's that simple. But that's where I'm coming from with where I am. And I will have something together. And I'll have something together when it's right. I'm not just going to throw stuff out there and say it's right, because I'm going to be held accountable for what I say. So with that, let's please move on to something else on the agenda. I can get my paperwork organized. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Cal. I'll be taking it with
it. All right.
Shane's working on it.
You do?
That's all.
The number 2 is now number 3, Shane, that's you.
I still have mine. I'll just do it real fast. You could dim the lights again, sorry.
Are we still on item 10 now?
Yeah, because it's combined. I'm gonna probably move in 4th or 5th gear, because we don't want you guys here till midnight. So I'm gonna move pretty fast, and it will be available online tomorrow. So if you miss anything, you'll see it online. So just keep your trigger in your hand there. We're gonna start with the conversation that's been going on since we formed our own school system in 2013. Basically, like, who's this guy talking up here, just telling you my education. One thing about history, my undergrad was, it's about research. So you may not necessarily know it, you look for the answers. You ask, you do the backgrounds, and you try to figure out, solve solutions. You can go ahead. I'm going to go out there. So, how should we lead the discussion? Employee reason arguments for remove emotion. Try to get out of your echo chamber, including mine. So I'm thinking, okay, what are other people thinking? Different streams of thought. Making a big decision, leaders should not use a few criteria to decide. We need to look at the big picture from multiple angles. Look at the forest, not just a few trees. So what we just happened, we probably looked at a few trees. So I'm gonna try to look at the forest, because when you look at more things, you have a bird's eye view of things, and you can see better where the path leads. And so I'm just giving you an idea. The more things you put into the mix and try to understand how to solve something, things become more clear. Okay. Thank you.
Mr.
Multiple
Mayor, I'm
sources.
sorry. As
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Amen.
well, I'm
Okay.
having trouble hearing you. Out of respect for everybody in the room, I would love if you would ask the back row to keep their comments to the very end in the hall. We literally cannot concentrate because of the chatter. I'm sorry to interrupt the meeting, but it can't go on any further. Thank you.
Okay. Multiple sources, Lakeland City staff, MTAS, we had a seminar recently, learned a lot of things. Professors in economics from Sanford, Rhodes, Washington, Jefferson College, officials from neighboring towns, construction companies, architects, engineers, educators, parents, a diverse mix of Lakeland citizens, people who do not necessarily align with what I think. Context. So while we're looking at numbers, we have to make sure things are kept in context. So we can say something looks bad, but if you pull back and look at in comparison to everything else, it may not be so scary. Okay. Non-factors. First, I think it does not cause or influence the result or outcome. Several non-factors. The sewer project has been something that people have been worried about. Well, currently, what we have right now with the existing sewer, we have 7 new neighborhoods that will go unimpeded, along with existing neighborhoods, as well as Lakeland Commons and the Lake District, and anything around the Canada I-40 corridor commercially, as well as anything west of C2. So in other words, we have a large capacity right now to build quite a bit. Now, I'm not saying we're not building, adding on to the sewer. Emily knows this. I'm saying stop freaking out. We're fine. We're building a lot right now. We're not waiting on the sewer to save the day. Just keep our eye on the ball. Okay. The debt, I've talked to city staff about this. The $2.3 million deficit is not what it seems. Actually, well, I'll let you read it right there. So it's one thing that's not taking account for raise property taxes coming into February. So that's another thing we should not be freaking out about. Next. Okay, New Canada Road. I, of all people up here, will be impacted by New Canada Road. I want to make sure it's done right. So I'm not trying to stall it. And Emily and Harold knows if we delay it, there's also other issues of, we lose funding. And so I'm not trying to stall it. This is something I'm keeping in mind when we're looking at the whole thing. Next, please. Great divide we have in our town. Obviously, that's the most obvious statement of the night, isn't it? Many factors to consider. Everyone has a different angle, don't they? Not everyone has the same perspective, and you have to appreciate that. Everyone comes from a different different walk in their life, old and young, and many kids, no kids. I'm taking that into consideration as well. So, moving forward, the Lakeland and Arlington are growing. Okay, shows right there with the lots. At that point, we're at 914 houses. I posted that on my commissioner page not too long ago, just to give you an idea of what's coming forward. So we are growing, and Arlington just as rapidly. Next slide. And we've updated this, so this is a good map. Thanks, Forrest, for helping me get that together, and Josh as well. Yeah. So that just shows you where the spread of different projects are. You'll see it more clearly tomorrow as online. But if you look at the number of lots, that's a lot of folks. Okay, that's a lot of people. So just think lots equal people. I'll expound upon that a little bit later. Yes. All right. Something that has been thrown out there: students per house. 41. Sorry. You throw that out the window because it's a national average. The problem with that is southern states have a higher fertility rate. Okay? Now, that's because the lower cost of living, bigger homes. So y'all think fertility, y'all think it's something else, but what I'm talking about is people generally have more kids in the South. That's what demographers call it. They go by fertility. Ted Worley used the same thing, so. All right. See, I'm moving fast, don't worry. I'll keep it entertaining. All right, so this is something in the Lakeland Schools demographic study. And right there, you notice some name differences because Lake Forest is now the Lake District. That changed as well. I'll explain that later. Proposed school site, that's stuff that has nothing to do with the sewer either, so it can be built right now that goes around the middle school. Those are also homes that could be added. Keep going, sorry. With this metric right here, it says 2.79 indicates almost 80 students per 100 homes. This is in Ted's demography. So here's the thing. Go to the next slide, please. It does not assume the shift in fertility due to homes turning over. Ted just talked about that not too long ago. People that are moving in have kids. That's the majority, a large majority of people moving in now. So that messes up the whole equation when they're using historical fertility for Lakeland. It's changing, okay? Another thing they'll take into account is it does not assume home construction. So when I had the 2,000 plus on there, it's not assuming that. So that changed it. So that's why continually our actual enrollment numbers will always pass the projections. Next slide, please. I think I've said most of that already. Yeah. Yeah. Next one. Okay, threshold. I won't get into that into detail. I'm leaving that in Ted's court, but you can read it tomorrow if you like. Talking about people will talk about threshold. That's one of the questions we get all the time. Next slide. Great leadership. So the same people that we trust that have done an excellent job with Lakeland Elementary and done a great job with Lakeland Middle. A lot of people suddenly don't trust them for Lakeland High. That's counterintuitive. That's not logical. If they've done such a great job and they've done well, been good stewards with the finances, and they've managed our school system with excellence, why would they suddenly shift with a Lakeland High? Doesn't really make sense. That's their legacy too. They're not gonna take chances. So I trust them in that. Next slide, please. That's just another graph, recent, very recent, about success rate. Notice Lakeland on there is ahead of everyone else. That's with Lakeland Elementary and Lakeland Middle. Next slide, please. Okay, quality versus quantity. Big schools benefit the high achievers. So everyone says, well, this student did great in this school. Well, if you're a high achiever, you can go to practically any school and you'll do well. That's just the nature of some children. Whereas the average student benefits much more with a better student-teacher ratio, smaller schools. So they get lost in the big school. Another thing, people really have a provincial, maybe the word, that outside of this area, high schools aren't this big everywhere. That's just Tennessee alone. But throughout the country, most high schools are not 2,000 to 3,000 students. Sorry, put y'all in there. But that's just not the norm. So let's not make that like, okay, we have to do that, because that's not the norm, and we know we can do well. Next slide. Okay. Here we go. Smaller class sizes, individual curriculums. So the plus size of small schools. No real correlation has been demonstrated between school size and curriculum quality. Something people have been thrown out there about AP and honors offers. No correlation. Sorry, it's not there. Students are less likely to fall through the cracks or feel cut off from school culture if they're in a small school versus a large school. Next slide, please. Yeah, we covered this already. This is about increasing costs. If it's a more conservative estimate, you could say $10 million, you cut it to in 4 years. So it's still, at minimum, it's 2 million per year as you wait. At minimum, increased construction costs, 2 million a year. So let's put that in the equation. Takeaways from the last school board meeting, that was Monday. He talked about it again tonight. Efficiency, enormous economies of scale, it's very efficient. People worried about, okay, what are they going to offer? Well, they said, we're going to talk to people. What do you guys want? Which is pretty good, considering you don't get that now. I mean, this is something that we're going to have, we're going to be able to dictate as citizens and have a say in our schools and our students in their high schools, right? That's just talking about the timeline. We've already gone over that quite a bit. 800 seat auditorium. I know you and I like that. I'm an arts guy, so a great auditorium is a plus. But he did talk about you would have to do the auditorium build out. You can't just knock out a wall and add on, but you can add athletic things later. Dr. Mitchell, who's been involved in this, this is not the first rodeo. He understands how to build schools. Next slide, please. Autonomy, having everything in-house. We can help decide school start times, curriculum, taxation with representations. In other words, we're getting taxed basically, and we have no say. Overall governance of things. Next slide, please. Rising building costs, I've gone over this. I've talked to multiple builders. They all say the same thing. A 19 to 22% increase in construction costs. A local builder I talked to 2 days ago, every line item has gone up. Concrete has skyrocketed. Labor is way up. Framing material, PVC up. Labor is actually interesting. Real quick. So contractors will come from Nashville and come into a construction site and say to guys, hey, we'll pay you more money. And sometimes in the middle of the day, they just disappear. And so that's making it where contractors here have to keep raising it up to retain these workers. It's something, it's making it much more difficult, and that'll keep going up. So just keep that in mind. With each student comes funds, $8,500 per student, state and federal. In local municipalities, an average of 10 to 11% gets set aside in fund balance. That's what I was talking about, money following the student. That's $600,000 annually going down the highway to Arlington that we'll be using for improvements, construction of buildings, and our local eventually. Okay, high school is not just an island, it's part of the ecosystem. So I'll try to summarize this real quickly. It all works together. A high school works with the local economy. So you have your students, they leave the high school and they go to a local restaurant or they shop. And because of the proximity to the high school, all the local businesses benefit. Okay, you also have events, and with those events, say they're sporting events. Say people come from out of town, the local hotels benefit. It all benefits the town. So it's not just a high school for the students. Okay, also, I'll talk to Ted about this. When you have an auditorium, it has the potential to be something like a GPAC or a BPAC. So it can benefit the town, where you have theater, shows. So it's not just about students. Everyone benefits. So just think about that. Developers look at a municipality, it draws in, when there's a high school, it entices developers. Because they're asking, when are you going to build a high school? Commercial and residential. High schools are development engines. High schools are catalyst for growth. It kickstarts the whole thing. Otherwise we stagnate. Otherwise we really just keep it in first gear. If we have it in high school, that's kind of where it is. It doesn't mean we're not growing. It's that it's just sort of sitting there in first gear. Maybe second in a good year, but it's really just staying there. You build a high school, it kickstarts it. So this is show how everything interrelates. Now you can put the high school on the left, the right, the top, the bottom, but it's how they interrelate. And they draw from it. Commerce, residential, Parks and Rec, City Hall. You could probably put 20 more circles in there to show all the other things that get impacted. I'm just giving you an idea here. High school is part of the ecosystem. It's part of the big picture. So don't think of it, when we're thinking about City Hall, let's not think of it in a vacuum. Let's not think of it like we're looking through that little peephole in the door. How about open the door? That's what I'm doing. I'm opening the door. That's all I'm doing. We can't wait on the sales tax to build because it's going to trickle in, folks. So this is what it is for the Lakeland Commons. This at full build out there, it's just been $350,000 annually in sales and property tax. That's about 2 years away, but that's not going to fall. We're going to be like, ooh, yeah, that's going to change the world for us. That just helps you pay loans, but that's not something you can wait on. You know, it's like, oh, hold on, you gotta wait. No, you gotta. That's just something that helps pay loans. That's not going to change the world. Next slide, please. So obviously the Lake District, which will take much longer to have a full build out. At 3 and 4 from now, we'll probably see a trickle of something, if nothing. You nuts again, too, right? But just think about it. Full build out, 5 to 10 years, maybe 4 million. But that's something that's down the road. What it helps us with is paying loans. That's what it helps us with. But we can't look at that and anticipate and wait for that sales tax to come in from that to build. We can't use that as a triggering device. Division will continue. I think action is a healing measure. I think because we're in limbo, it's hurting us economically. It hurts us with development, commercial, residential. It also gives people who want to look at our town like, I don't know, guys. You know, I mean, luckily, we have an awesome elementary school and a great middle school, and that draws in a lot of people, and they see that potential, and they're just hoping. People are hoping in high school because that's where it's turning into, guys. If you move into the town, are moving in with that anticipation. That's the majority of the people. Talk to realtors. That's what's going on. Paying for the school, let's just acknowledge it. I think we've said it all now by now, but I said it earlier in December. We have to do a loan of some sort to pay for high school. It doesn't fall out of the sky. Developers don't build it. And look at that at the bottom. I think Kyle might have proposed something. The federal government. So I guess there is potential there. I'll acknowledge that. Thank you. We're almost there. Timeline. So, say the high school's funded 2019 or 2020, 2019. Building is ongoing. August potentially opening for 9th grade. August most likely open. So what we're looking at here is not too far away. 2023. Even then, you still don't have the 12th graders probably because they're phasing them in. And that's another thing. I put the slide out. Well, maybe in the slide I've been editing 1,000 times, but people freak out about there's going to be a mass exodus. Like, that's not how it works when you build a high school. You phase it in. So the kids that are there, if they say 11th and 12th grade, they get to finish out in Arlington. We're not going to say, no, you can't. That's not how it works. It gets phased in. So it's not like all of a sudden, Arlington knows that we want to build a high school, and Arlington is prepared. This is not something done in secret here, okay? So they know they have plenty of time. Whenever we start building a high school, whenever that is, it's not like all of a sudden, poof, it's going to appear and we're going to just take all the children out of Arlington High School. So it's something that they're going to have plenty of time to prepare for. So if you want to look at it, here we go. Something I talked about, someone asked me before, I've had this question a few times. How big do you want Lakeland to be? Well, I'm not a dictator, so I can't call that, but I would say I wouldn't want Lakeland to be near as big as Carterville or Germantown. I think smaller. I think 30,000 is a high number. I think we'd probably do less. And I think that would complement what we have. I'm the biggest tree hugger in here. Okay, so I'm trying to work with the landscape. And I think we can have a really good looking town. So I don't, like with the houses we already have planned right now, that's quite a bit of houses. I'm not trying to push the gas on too many more at this point, but we know we can build some high quality developments after the ones we already have listed. So we can do a smaller high school because we're not going to be a huge town. We don't need a mega high school because we're not going to be as near as big as Carterville or Germantown. Like I've been talking about, K through 12 equals residential growth, comps get lifted. Most people appreciate that, I think. Commercial growth, high-end shopping, tax revenue, lower property taxes, increased amenities. We're talking about amenities. When you get it kick-started, you can look for those amenities down the road. City Hall benefits as well, parks benefit. So, but what gets it going is having that high school, because it gets everything going. If you try to do commercial first, you're just waiting. You're kind of waiting, because those commercial residential developers are kind of waiting on that high school to see that population boom, that base. Next. That's it. All right, that's it for now. Thank you.
Anybody else want to add to that? No, I will add something though. And I know and I had this on my list from earlier, and you just hit it. And there is one thing that's part of what I'm working on. I want everybody out here to know, and I will beg everyone, I'm sure the school people are going to fall into this. I am putting together a survey of offerings of what you want to see and what your child may be interested in. And I can tell you, once I started digging into what all is available for high school students, not the time when I went to school, I mean, my list is exponential. It is huge, but I want to get that out in a survey form. I'm still working on trying to figure out how to make that happen, because I think that's huge when it comes to doing it right. And that's what I've always said. I'm not against doing it. I'm against doing it wrong. I'm against, putting the cart before the horse. But I do want you to understand this is not something I'm kicking down the road. I do intend on sending the survey out because I want to know what the kids that are here in our middle and elementary school want in their high school. What are their expectations? What are their interests? Whether it's fine arts, whether it's sports, whether it's, oh my God, it's a huge list of things. But I was even amazed. But I do plan on getting that out, and I appreciate you saying that, because that way it's not a surprise. I wanted to mention it publicly that I will be getting that out to folks, and I hope everyone will participate. Surveys is only about 10%, but I would like to see everyone contribute to this.
Not to continue my theme of adversarial tonight, however, just want to make sure, Mr. Mayor, that it sounds like it's a job of the school board or working in conjunction with the school board. I hate to overstep our boundary, so whatever survey you're looking to put out, I respectfully ask that you run that by the future attorney and make sure that we are within our purview.
Yeah, and I would absolutely run that with Ted and Kevin. I wouldn't be doing it myself personally or as a member of just this board.
Mr. Mayor, and I agree that we all want feedback, and I think it's a great idea. Perhaps that's something Shane and Dr. Hoyle could work on together and get out. I think really that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to ordinance number 2. Shane, is there anything you want to, I'm assuming you're just going to brief us on what we'll be voting on for the next meeting?
Yeah, I would like to offer, they've been patiently sat through the last 2.5 hours. Will and Brittany from the chamber are here, and I've asked them to discuss a little bit about the edge match that's in this budget amendment. So if Will or Brittany or Brittany could come up, and we'll provide them some
Good evening. Just use the state address or anything?
No, you're with the chamber. Thanks for your patience.
We'll keep it short. We know we've run long tonight, but we did want to come and speak briefly. We know we've requested some funds to match the EDGE grant that we've received for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. That amount, as you're probably all aware, is $30,000. So we want to talk a little bit about that, answer any questions you may have. Of course, we've met with each of you individually to show, have a little more intimate conversation and give you those details. But for the citizens, we'd like to put it on record as well. I'll hit it at a high level, and then give me details. So with this upcoming budget, we get $30,000 from the EDGE grant, coming from Shelby County. And one of the requirements is matching contribution from the city. And so we try to start that dialogue well ahead. We realize we've had a change in commissioners and mayors since that first dialogue, which is why we try to get back out and get in front of you and talk about what we're doing. But the 3 main categories are, work on an existing business plan for the city, business recruitment, and a marketing plan. I'll let Rick, if you want to talk about some of the details of that, since you wrote the report.
I think you all have seen a copy of this. I know I discussed it with a couple of you guys last year when we applied for this. But the existing business plan is just an ongoing plan that we have with our current members and potential future members that, any way that we can look into enhancing Lakeland or the business community, money that we can put into that. So we've created a couple of things that we would like to do as far as the Highway 64 corridor. We worked with we talked to Wes today, our chamber board meeting, regarding just the beautification of it, possibly looking at the interchange area at 64 and I-40, you know, the welcome, differentiating the Lakeland side of 64 from the Memphis side. So those are things that we're working on, and that's a third of the total plan. Business recruitment is another. We did hire another membership director, and that was part of this plan as well. She has been with us for 3 months, I think, and we've seen an increase in participation and chamber activities, also in membership, so we're excited about that. The marketing plan, we worked with the EDC as far as getting the chamber guide out, the town guide for Lakeland. Any other marketing strategies, I know we've discussed with Dexter, putting together more brochures for potential businesses, site selectors, all that. So this is just money that, you know, we're wanting to put back into the city. It's a match that, you know, we requested. We received the half from Edge, so we're just asking for that half from the city.
And I'll add a few more points. I think it's a great presentation. You know, some of the things that we've done with the prior grant, I won't take long, but the prior director, before we had Buchanan on board, and the prior board did a really good job getting the chamber kind of back out of the ground. So I want to give them, acknowledge that to them as well. But since then, we've also seen a large increase in revenue. So we've had to adjust a lot of our controls. We've updated our database that's been all did, and we did that last year with grant funds that allows us to manage the chamber on a much more efficient level. And we've also updated our accounting procedures. We've been able to bring on a CPA to look at that on a monthly level for us at a very, very generous rate on his part. So we basically, what I'm trying to say is we've laid the foundation in a prior year that we're going to be able to continue the chamber on, no matter what who the board members are, so that as we continue to grow as a city and continue to grow as a chamber, anybody can step into the position and not have to reinvent the wheel, if you will. So we've really worked on that foundation, and now we're just looking to take it to the next level. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have about the funding and anything of that nature.
I'd like to say I'm excited about Highway 64.
Yeah, we all are.
And I have nothing but, you know, all time support you guys, because I know you know the issues, and you know what we need. And I've been impressed with what you have done so far, and let's just make sure we get a big bang out of our bucks, and I think we'll get that from you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
And we've had, for those of you that don't know, we've had 2 ribbon cuttings and grand openings in the last couple of weeks, and I've been fortunate enough to be around and be able to participate, and it's quite a good feeling to watch them cut that ribbon, and the excitement from the new business owners and all, and it's just great for the growth of the city, and I appreciate y'all doing all of that for sure. Appreciate the invitation, so keep up the good work for sure.
You guys know you have my support, so I'm excited about the gateway there as well, because right by LA Fitness, that's the first thing you see on the left as you go down 64. I think that'd be a big improvement.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Right. The next item is the resolution that'll come up, Mr. Kevin, if you would.
Just obviously, as we spoke last month, we have one open position for the PRB that needs appointment. To let you guys know, Sally Nickel has withdrew her application. She just felt at this time she wanted to go a different direction. So she kindly let us know ahead of time. And then I apologize because I'm probably going to mispronounce his last name. Dr. Espinosa was here but had to leave to meet the patient. Sherry's here. I'm not sure the other candidates. Chad is here. Okay. Sherry and Chad are here if you guys would like to speak to them about the resolution. Jason, Dr. Espinola, and Chad, like they said. And Chad is our only candidate here for this.
Chad, you've been here the whole time. You want to say anything? You've waited 3 hours.
Chuck them up.
Yes, sir.
All right.
State your name and address for the record if you don't mind.
My name is Chad Reynolds. I live at 2971 Shadow Green Lane, and I work at FedEx and as an analyst in the IT. I have a beautiful wife, Heather, and 2 boys. One's at Lakeland Middle, one's at Lakeland Elementary, and passionate about sports. I love it, and but more importantly, I'm passionate about this city. I love Lakeland. I love the potential, and I would love to be a part of it. Any questions?
We got quite a bit of information, so I think we don't hold you up.
Look at your whole resume here. Quite nice. Like the purple shirt, too. I have a good too.
Got rid of FedEx.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Guys, have any questions for me about the position or anything?
I believe we're good. Thanks, Kevin. All right. That's all the resumes for the boards. Let's move on to Forest. Yes, I should be having you read this, but we're kind of in the form, so.
So we have the, actually 2 commissions appointments here, board and commission, that I'll be presenting to you. The first is our Board of Appeals. We have 3 terms that are expiring. We have 4 applicants that have submitted their applications. Mr. Patrick Kitchens, Ryan McDaniel, both whom are existing members. We also have Zach Coleman and Brad Fortner. And I believe you should have all of those applications. We do not have lead applicants come tonight. I'm happy to have them come to speak before you at your regular meeting. Didn't know how long tonight was going to be, and frankly, we just didn't make it invite and apologize.
No problem.
No problem.
I wouldn't mind if they wanted to come to the next. It's just part of the process. I'm sure it's fun. And we still meet each other.
And I can move on to the EDC if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, so EDC, we have 2 open spots, and actually 5 applicants. 2 of whom are existing board members, Keith Acton and Ron Purefoy. Then we also have Jeremy Burnett, Zach Coleman, who also applied for the Board of Appeals position, and Stephen, I hope I don't mispronounce this, Stephen Bale as another applicant. And we'll be sure to invite all of them to come to your commission meeting next week.
Jeremy was here, but I think he must have to leave.
Any other questions?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We have all the resumes though, that you got. Fantastic. Number 6, Emily, can you just speak to that resolution, please?
Yes, so this project is a sewer repair project. We noticed a sinkhole in the point, and in front of, let's see, 3940 Point Drive. We cambered the line. There's a break in the service right at the main, and we initially got some estimates. The reason why we would not do it in-house is the 18 feet deep. We don't have a piece of equipment that'll reach that deep. We received some estimates prior to bidding it out, and it looked like it was around the $30,000 range, which we were required to bid. So we put it out for bid. We got 2 bids. In-score was $34,600. That was the low bid. The second was $56,988. So we are recommending approval of a contract with In-score for $34,600. Also put in a contingency of $10,000 since this is an underground utility. If we ran into any unsuitable soils or the break was longer or there was something else wrong, we just like to have some money there in case something unforeseen comes up. Are there any questions about the project?
This is something we have to fix, it's not
Yeah.
something they can stick a band-aid on, that's for sure.
Can we move it to the consent agenda?
Yeah, I would ask if there's anything that we talk about tonight that you want to move on to consent for next Thursday, just let us know, and we'll certainly do that.
Yeah, this is something that, I'm gonna take a debate to figure out that we have to fix this, so absolutely, yeah, I'm okay with moving that to consent. But, all right, number 7, the resolution for the final plat for Kensington Manor, Mr. Forrest again.
Yes, thank you. This is 24 lots, Kensington Manor, Phase 1. Hopefully bring you some new homes and some new residents to Lakeland for a previous discussion. But this was approved, recommended for approval by the MPC with the caveat that we have our plat signed by all the appropriate parties, and we have done so. All the signatures are obtained on our Mylar. You'll see the signatures that should be in your packet. But actually not Emily has signed that, I believe, and so we're complete with the signatures, and answer any questions.
I'd like to combine see the design for the intersection there between Creekside and 70 and the interest of the subdivision. Just with you one day, just to understand across it's going to be a piece of intersection.
Yes, sir.
I will have it. I'll have
Good,
the,
good.
yeah, the engineer actually, I have the original design. TDOT had changed their specs in the time that project's been around for 10 or 12 years. And so I have not received the final, TDOT's supposed to be issuing the permit any day now. And so I haven't seen the final, which won't change much, but essentially it adds a turn lane and widens it, you know.
Whenever you're ready, I'd just like to see it.
Once I get it, I'll let you know, and you can come in and see it.
I'll make that up front of the line.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
My sister did.
All right. I think we're good to go with that one. That's quite a phase 1.
Good to go consent-wise?
I wouldn't have a problem with that one. It's been through this, it's been through all the planning and NPC approved it last meeting, so I didn't see anything from the NPC's perspective. Wesley could probably speak to that as well as the liaison. I didn't see anything in there to raise any.
No, and we still have the back phases, because there's 5 phases total, correct? And so that's just phase 1.
They've gone through all the formalities. It's just about us stamping it, so I'm okay with that. Let's move that to consent as well. Number 8 is the resolution for the 2019-20 budget calendar. Kyle, anything?
So I think the goal of the budget calendar was essentially just to give the board an opportunity to walk through the budget with city staff and make sure that everybody is aware of what we plan on using the revenues we generate for. So to that extent, we've outlined a few dates on that calendar where we plan on having some kind of workshop with the commissioners. Maybe, I think in this particular case, I anticipated a Saturday, time to be determined, but of course we could do an evening or afternoon or whenever. We are obviously more flexible than y'all because we work here, work full-time here. But so that to the extent that those dates conflict with dates on your schedule, then we're happy to revise it. But the goal is essentially just to give you guys an idea of the budget process, give you guys an opportunity to, the first time, at least my vision is, we'll have all the budget, all of the department heads come in, have a little presentation, maybe not a formal presentation, but a presentation to you guys about, specific line items that you may have questions about. The second time we have the budget meeting that's specifically for Shane and I to walk you through changes that we've made so you can see, okay, we wanted to cut X, Y, Z, or we wanted to include A, B, C, and they have been included. And then, of course, we would hopefully be able to speed that process along when it comes to first and second reading. So that was the plan. To the extent that there's, conflicts, feel free to mark up the calendars and send them back to me or tell me right now, whatever you guys
out, this really helps me to plan for, full-time job. Not to, okay. Appreciate it.
Speaking of planning, we had March 15th was the start point.
I just arbitrarily picked random dates, so
Well,
if that's spring break or something to that effect.
Well, arbitrarily chose to go to Chicago about a year ago.
All right, no problem, we can do that.
All right.
I'll make it up.
Be back on Monday.
You're not allowed any weekends.
Freeze.
All right, thanks, Kyle.
Consent item, or do you want to have more discussion Thursday on dates?
We can always pull from the consent if we need to.
Yeah, we'll put it on there, like I said, we can pull it if we need. Number 9 is the resolutions about Lakeland Fire. Shane, would you like to?
They're fairly straightforward, just based on direction from the board. I offered up 2 different resolutions. One that would have me go back to Shelby County for a 6-month extension to January 1st of 2020. And then a resolution essentially rescinding the resolutions to essentially create the Lakeland Fire Department. So those are the 2 resolutions that are for your consideration.
Me first?
Sure, if you want to speak, you got the floor.
You know my position on this. I think going with the second resolution to go ahead and just put this fire department thing to bed would go a long way to let us move on bigger problems. Now, the school's not a problem, but that's something got to be solved. And I think if the fire station issue goes away, that's something else we don't have to deal with. We can concentrate on things that are important.
I'll save my conversations next week.
Okay, fair enough. All righty. Already done number 10. Number 11 is discussion of the Citizens Advisory Board formation. Commissioner Biden.
I will be as brief as I possibly can, but I delayed this a month, so I want to go ahead and get it on the table so that I can have movement in the forward direction on this. Basically, what Shane and I have discussed is we'll take a map of Lakeland and we'll divide it into larger neighborhoods, and we'll have a total of 10 representatives. Stonebridge, the further east on Highway 64 and up Canada, take one from Plantation Hills, around the lake, a little further east, going northward, North Lakeland representation, and enough little areas where we will have 10 total representatives on the board. It'll be yet to be determined the application process for that, but I see it being similar or identical to the application that any other board goes through. And what we will have to determine is how the people that are appointed to these boards will receive and disseminate information back to their area. That will be something that they can determine with their neighborhood association, or they can use social media to get suggestions of what they want to come to the Citizens Advisory Board, and then they need to be able to give that information after the meeting back to those people, those citizens. There will be quarterly meetings, but since we're getting started so late, we may do an every other month thing just to kind of catch up. There will be a mandatory attendance commitment. If we do go with the quarterly, they're going to have to, and this will be a 2-year term, they will need to commit to attending 6 of the 8 meetings. If we change it to every other month, we'll determine that. It needs to be a commitment that they are willing to take on. We will have department directors to come and meet, like one quarterly meeting. Emily, you may come and present the things that are important to know about the sewer and the sewer fund and the things that citizens are interested in but don't know the details and have questions about. Same thing for you, Kevin. Parks, they may have an interest in their particular area of the city to have a park, and that may not be on our radar, and then we may need to have it on our Parks and Rec radar. Things that they might like to see, things that are concerns, crime, anything that they feel like the city hall needs to know about, and we're going to then give them information as to how it works to proceed with a concern that we may want to move on to help them with in their neighborhood. Basically, that is how we will have the framework set up, and I want to open up the application process if this board agrees with moving forward with the Citizen Advisory Board. I'd like to do that potentially at the March meeting or April at the latest to go ahead and get that moving. So we will be putting out information on the city website and on social media platforms to get the interest out in the area so that the application process can begin and people can start sending in their interest for these boards and start trying to think about how they would like to handle their position in getting information back out to the citizens in their area. So that's very brief, but that's how I would like to see things set up, and Shane and I have talked, and we think that that's manageable and workable, and we want everyone to have a voice for their neighborhood and for their concerns, and I believe that this is a way to do that. Any questions, something I've not thought of, or?
That's a great idea. I think you've got it. It's a fantastic idea. And I get more people involved and ready to speak up and serve, for sure. So.
Right. And this may set someone up for wanting to be on another board, or potentially run for office, or, future people that want to be involved in the leadership of the city.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Appreciate that.
This reminds me of we had a leadership Lakeland class in 2005, and it was put on by Commissioner Stephanie Anderson, Cecil Tompkins at the time. If they want to reach out to Stephanie, she's at St. Mary's now. Okay. And it was great. I mean, on the NPC, you got Buffalo, that came out of the class. You had a gentleman that ran, I forget his name, but he was elected out of that class. And it just, like you said, it makes you think of things you didn't know, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And we got to do tours, and so I think it'd be very beneficial and something that people will definitely be. I think you'll have a hard time deciding between 10 candidates.
I know. I'm afraid that's going to be the most difficult. I don't know. We'll have to figure out how we're going to do that in a real fair and equitable way. I think the thing they'll enjoy the most, Emily, is taking a tour of the sewer facility like we were put through the first time I got on this board. It's a pretty interesting place. All right.
Shane says it smells like money.
Yeah, well, it really does.
I'm not going to stop right.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 12, the discussion about separating the NPC and DRC. Vice Mayor.
There's no objection. I'd like to move this to the March meeting, if that's okay.
Sure. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Defer that to March. All right. The next one is mine, discussion of hiring an ethics officer for the city of Lakeland. I believe now that we have some candidates for city attorney, and they will actually be acting as the ethics officer for the city per the charter. I don't see that we need to pursue that any further at this time, so I'm just going to formally remove that from being an item, unless there's conversation otherwise. And also, I'm going to defer the next item, number 14, the discussion for the creation of the Citizens Financial Review Board. I'd like to move that to March as well, so we can attend to the business that's going to be coming fast at hand. So if there's no objection to that, we'll do that. leads the discussion to update the New Canada Road. Commissioner Wright, that's all yours.
I'll do the very abbreviated version, so we can do the longer version maybe next week or something. But basically what I was gonna go over was, just so people don't know, people think they know where it's going, and then we had a Windward Slopes HOA meeting some time ago, and I think Jim Atkinson was going over the path, and they were like, what? And they didn't know. So it's good to know. So that's one thing we're gonna go over, is just zoom in on the map. Because you go to newcanroad.com, you can kind of see where it goes, and you have to zoom in. You're like, oh, it doesn't connect with, New Canada Road does not connect to Old Canada on the south end. It ends there. So it has a connector road that I know you're making sure I'm saying this, but there's a connector road, and obviously there's two roads that go through my neighborhood, Wow Hill, Winville, and then it connects on the north end. It merges. But I just want people to understand it, and also get a better understanding of the timeline and the transactions that go on continuously as it's being built. There's money spent, money refunded, money spent, so it's much different than, let's say, a school or a big project where you just, here's the money. It's much more, there's many more transactions going on, so it's kind of confusing. So we can go with that next time. Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. I know a lot of people are looking forward to getting that built, per my email inbox, I can assure you. And then finally, discussion on neighborhood security system implementation, and also Commissioner Wright.
Yeah, so real quick, I have people that I know that there are ways to fund it that does not have to involve city money, or if it does, it's minimal. It's not large portions. But basically where you would have cameras placed at key areas along 64, Canada Road, entrances to neighborhoods, not in neighborhoods, because I know people have issues with that, like, 1984, Big Brother stuff, So it's just key entrances, so you can monitor if something does happen, you can go and see, okay, plates, what, someone coming and going. So it helps in that regard. So, but I'm just going to go into that some other time. Just give you an idea that it's something that we're working on.
Yeah, something that I've heard from several different folks, and I myself even spoke to it during the campaign. As I did more research, we have to find out the legalities, because there are things, as far as information stuff that, you're on a public street, so.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like that, with my Citizens Advisory Committee, that to be part of that we start a network in neighborhoods of, maybe not in necessarily the typical neighborhood watch, however, a communication between those people in those neighborhoods about security and watching out for each other and reporting things and not being afraid to report things, and have the sheriff's department come out and speak with us so that they're aware of what they need to be doing in their neighborhoods and what they can begin to do to increase the security of the neighborhood. So I would like that to be an integral part of that advisory board.
Absolutely, no reason why not to. I have the gentleman's card from the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. That's the neighborhood watch guy. I met with them last week. I was quite impressed. Great team out there, great team.
Just a quick question, maybe weeds, but do they have those little lights on there?
They don't have to, but that's something you'll see along Poplar, Walnut Road, and some of the more affluent neighborhoods. It works because, for example, on Central Avenue, where you have Second Pres, the neighborhoods that put up the cameras, there's almost no crime. But the neighborhoods that didn't do it, that's where it's distributed to. And I tell people that's what happens to crime. You don't stop or end it. You just redistribute it. You move it. That's essentially what happens, because there's only so much locking up that goes on. Because a lot of people commit a crime, they're not going to get, they don't get necessarily arrested. But the cameras are there to prevent just as much to catch. It's prevention that's more important. That's the biggest aspect of it. My neighborhood, when I lived in Midtown, our street put up cameras, and we had a sign that said surveillance. It's been over 10 years, nothing. In Midtown, nothing. No one's been bothered, because it's just the fact that you have the surveillance, the camera, and it's the sign that says surveillance. That just, people will take the path of least resistance. So if there's a problem, they're going to avoid it. Criminals tend to want to avoid cameras. So.
I was at the Food Veterans Day ceremony at Elmwood. And we left there at the meeting and the flood course that I left this morning.
Yeah, understand.
All right, any other announcements? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Just part of the meeting.
Second.